All right. I am back. All right. We're just going to watch some videos that I queued up on my watch later, and then play some Warhammer again tonight. Tomorrow will probably be a longer stream. I'm not working because it's going to be snowing, so can't pour concrete when it's snowing. But yeah. There we go.
If you live in Montana, you could lower your electric bill to less than $30 a month.
Fucking
How?
ads, bro.
The former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows reportedly testifying with immunity in the federal investigation of Donald Trump and the 2020 election subversion. Joining us now, one of Trump's current rivals for the Republican presidential nomination, the former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Chris
Governor, thanks so
Christie
much
is
for
such a
joining us.
cunt,
You're former
bro.
also federal prosecutor. You were the U.S. attorney in New Jersey for about 6 years. How worried should Trump be right now about Mark Meadows being granted immunity?
Desperately worried.
I don't think
I'll
Trump
tell you a
did
story. The
anything
day that
wrong, so I
Donald
don't
Trump,
think he should be
named
worried.
Mark Meadows chief of staff. He called me
I think
and told me that Mark
about
Meadows was going to be
that.
the next James Baker.
I think he should be
Now,
worried
look,
because
if
they're just
the
going
person
to
you call the next James Baker
indict him.
is now
They're going
testifying
to
that you were lying to the American people
charge
about
him
the
no
election
matter
results
what.
from election night forward, which is reportedly what Mark Meadows is testifying, and that you knew all along that what you were saying was not backed up by the facts. Donald Trump is in very, very big trouble, and he is going to face real jail time for doing this if that's what's proven in court.
Right now, Trump is clearly still the dominant frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Will this latest development with Mark Meadows actually impact how voters, Republican voters, feel about the former president?
Wolf, the walls are closing in on Donald Trump. Jenna Ellis pled guilty today. She's agreed to testify against the former president. Sidney Powell's agreed to testify against the former president. Ken Chesebro has agreed to testify against the former president, not only in Atlanta, but also in the federal January 6th trial for Jack Smith. And now Mark Meadows. And Mark Meadows was, as you know, Wolf, Donald Trump's shadow the entire time he was chief of staff. He will know every conversation, every lie, every illegal action that was taken by Donald Trump. And he's going to be able to testify to it. And he's not going to be able to back off of what he told me, which was he considered Mark Meadows the next James A. Baker III. Well, if you think he's got that much integrity, trust, and honor, that's the wrong person to have sitting in the witness chair pointing the finger of guilt at you if you're Donald Trump. And that's going to affect Republican voters as we get ready to vote in Iowa and New Hampshire over the next 3 or 4 months.
Do you think these plea deals, these immunity deals, will lead to even more people from Trump's inner circle seeking immunity, or a plea deal for that matter, with the prosecutors?
Of course it will, Wolf, because it's like a game of musical chairs. There's only so many
There
chairs,
was not
and there's always
prepared.
more people
Damn it,
than there
bro.
are chairs. And the
These
sooner you get in
fucking
the chair,
rats.
the sooner you know you're not going to jail. And you never know when the music's going to stop playing, and they're not going to let you take a seat. I did this for 7 years, Wolf, in the 5th largest office in America. I did over 130 corruption trials without a defeat. I know how this is done. They are doing a textbook. It's clear that Fani Willis and Jack Smith are cooperating with each other, looking to buttress each other's cases. This is all bad news for Donald Trump, but the worst news is his conduct. None of this would be happening if he had lied about the election, attempted to overturn it, and then incite people to try to stop the certification of it. All of those things are things that he'll be on trial for on January 6th, and we haven't even spoken about the illegal classified documents that he heisted out of the White House and how much trouble he's in for that as well.
Yeah, lots going on. Chris Christie, thanks so much for joining us.
Wolf, thanks for having me.
Not how you would have done it.
They invited in a ton of international journalists, and they showed them footage, basically footage that they'd recovered. If you want to have a realistic solution, I think what I'm gonna do for the next few days, I want to put together a manifesto, I think, on a lot of the reporting relating to the Hamas stuff. I think it's probably good to do a retrospective to try to figure out, like, what the f is going on. How are so many people like f***ing up so much? It's not even uniquely Hassan, though he definitely is the leader of the left-leaning stuff. Online, the alternative left-leaning stuff online, but a lot of mainstream publications f***ed up a lot of the reporting in ways that it shouldn't have been, in like very obviously bad ways, in ways that I feel confident I could have called this out. Like if I was an editor. Wait, hello? Did something just die? Did I kick a cable? Do you mean the media screwed up with the hospital story and the 40 beheaded baby story? The 40 beheaded baby story and the hospital story f***ups are two completely different types of f***ups. And I hate the lack of critical thinking that people have when it comes to viewing somebody making a mistake. Not all mistakes are the same. Hold on. Wait.
Yeah,
did it
I mean, there's ones that are like intentional,
what was I
and ones
saying?
that are
The baby error and the 40 beheaded baby error and the hospital bombing error are not the same type of error. Like, you can follow the genesis of each misreporting, and one of them shouldn't happen, but I think you could see what was going on. The other was clearly unacceptable. From what I could see, the beheaded baby one, it seemed like the genesis of this was 40 babies were reported killed.
Damn it, bro. These guys
Somebody
are
saw
strong.
at least one of the babies were beheaded, and then somehow people conflated that with 40 babies were beheaded. Okay, now one, you can see where like it came from, even if it was stupid and sloppy. But two, there was it was mostly factually correct, right? There were 40 dead babies. At least one was decapitated. They weren't all 40 decapitated, right? But so it's mostly correct. Not 40 beheaded babies. It's 40 dead babies with a few of their heads cut off, right? You could follow the genesis of like that, the evolution of how that got up. The hospital bombing, the initial claim, every single part of this failed, and the fact reporting was unimaginably stupid.
Yeah.
The original claim was Israel missile striked.
We still don't really know exactly what happened, though, so...
A hospital building with 400 people dead. All four parts of this misreport were not only completely untrue, there was no factual basis. For almost any part of this. It wasn't Israel. It was probably that Islamist jihadist group. It clearly wasn't a missile, okay? The crater is about as big as if your mom jumped out the 10th-story window, okay, in a building in New York, okay? The crater was not there. There were no way there were 400 people dead. Impossible. And it wasn't a hospital that was hit. It was a parking lot outside of a hospital. Every single part of the reporting on that is completely not true. The fact that people are trying to compare the 40 beheaded baby thing to the 40
should I do this? Yeah, I need money.
beheaded baby thing to the hospital bombing misreport it's a bad faith. It's a bad, nobody is seriously making an argument in good faith. It's just a desperate attempt to try to both sides of the situation. Yeah, sure, one of them could be more forgiving than the other, but the main problem still remains. The media ran with the stories, were correcting them, or waiting for it. I'm sorry, did they? Somebody get correct. I'm curious. Did any mainstream media outlet report 40 beheaded babies? Any of them? Because I know it was a lot on social media, but I don't remember reading any mainstream media reporting 40 beheaded babies. I don't think this fixes anything, but I'm not sure if you saw the editor's note from New York Times on the hospital reporting. We'll probably go over all this tomorrow. But like, bro, how are you gonna let a terrorist tell you that like this happened and then report it uncritically? And the I was talking to I'm gonna Wicked Supreme in real life about this. Dude, am I gonna be able to find it? Does anybody have a link to... Oh wait, I've never seen my Reddit account. Does anybody have a link to the initial BBC article? I wonder, maybe I'll include this. Like going back and rereading some of these articles, bro, these are like some of the dumbest. I can't believe this made it past like, and what do you call them? Like the editor board or the editors that decide like ultimately what goes in articles, what gets published. Bro, this shit was unbelievable to me. Let's see. How do I find Reddit posts that I've saved? Profile. Oh, I think it was this article. Good job. This is the thread where the journalist saw. Gotcha. There's just so many unbelievable things. Hundreds of people have been killed by an explosion at a crowded hospital in Gaza City. Health officials say. Why not? Why would you put this here? This article is unbelievable. I read this article. It was insane. Health officials. What the f? This sounds like some legit shit. When this is, I think it was the first article that the BBC had written. One doctor condemned what he called a massacre at Al Ali Arab Hospital, while another spoke of a scene of total devastation. Keep in mind that they're going by eyewitness testimony with no pictures. No, bro, it's 2023. Like 5 billion people have smartphones now. A scene of total devastation. Why not ask for a single picture? A single picture. Palestinian officials said the blast was caused by an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli military says it was a result of a failed rocket launch by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, an accusation the militant group rejected. Israeli warplanes and artillery have been bombing Gaza in response to an unprecedented. Hold on, this is my favorite part of the article here is Zahir Kuhail, a British Palestinian civil engineering consultant and university professor who was nearby at the time, at night, okay, told the BBC that what he had witnessed was beyond imagination. I saw 2 rockets coming from an F-16 or an F-35 fighter jet, shelling these people and killing them ruthlessly without any mercy. In the dark of night. First of all, I'm pretty sure these planes can launch missiles from like 10 or 20 miles away, okay? In pitch black, you saw F-16, which are 2 totally different planes, by the way, right? Twin engine versus single engine. You saw F-35 or F-16 shooting, like, how do you read a statement like this? It's like, that seems like valid eyewitness. Like, let's throw it in. Bro, this article is wild. Yeah. How would you even, isn't it pretty normal for BBC to report eyewitness accounts? Like, don't they almost always do this? Do they? Hold on. Do you think they would? Like, if I were to go to, if I were to go and say I saw like a UFO kill 1,000 people, would they say it was reported by a guy that he witnessed a UFO murdering 1,000 people? No, shut the fuck up. What do you mean? Oh, F-16s and F-30s are both single engine? Oh, they might be. Sorry, my bad. That's why you mixed them up, because they're so similar.
When the tides of war seemed insurmountable, when all hope appeared lost, extraordinary leaders emerged to defy the odds. The Savior Generals. Introducing Victory and the Savior Generals, a new ebook by historian and Hoover Senior Fellow Victor Davis Hanson. Are you ready to unlock the secret of history's most remarkable leaders? Witness how these exceptional leaders harnessed innovative thinking, a contrarian perspective, and a willingness to channel conventional wisdom to rescue seemingly lost wars.
The reporting on this is wild, okay? The reporting on this is unbelievably
they offered
wild.
me a shitty deal. I'm gonna be pissed.
I don't think BBC's biased towards Palestine. I just think they're biased to trying to appear impartial. That's probably why they hyped up pro-Palestinian shit. I don't believe that's true, okay? I think that this is one of the most botched stories of all time, okay? I think that this whole thing has been wild. And it's been the driver. Like, also, I think you should compare the difference in tone between when they knew that it was Israel that had bombed them. It was like the worst thing ever, this horrible. But then when they figured out that, oh, maybe it actually came from Gaza, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's Israel's fault anyway. Bro, get the f out of here, okay? Get the f out of here. I'm trying to find the Twitter thread. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay. Boom, boom. This wasn't when I originally saw it, but this must have been one of the journalists that saw it. So Israel apparently released, declassified, showed. They invited in a ton of international journalists, and then they showed them footage, basically footage that they'd recovered. I just saw indestructible raw footage of Hamas's massacre, along with 100 other international journalists provided by Israeli authorities. Here are the notes I took. 1. Hamas terrorists screaming Allah Akbar as he frantically tries to behead a dead man with a shovel. 2. A father and 2 sons, roughly 7 and 9, running for their lives in their underwear into what appeared to be a bomb shelter with an open entrance. A Hamas terrorist throws a hand grenade into the shelter, killing the father and badly injuring the 2 sons, who run back to the house. So many more scenes, but I hope you get the gist. The authorities asked us not to film the screening out of respect for the relatives of the Israeli victims. If anyone has any doubt with what happened, I truly don't know what to say. 4 was Hamas terrorists setting fire to a house in a kibbutz. 5, a beheaded Israeli soldier. 6, a photo of a dead baby in childbearing beyond recognition. 2 continued. The 2 sons are screaming for their dad, saying they're going to die. A Hamas terrorist casually and calmly takes a bottle of water from the family's fridge and drinks it as the 2 boys weep. 7, scores of dead people on the road after Hamas executed them in the cars, yelling Allah Akbar. 8, Hamas terrorist calling his parents, saying, I killed 10 Jews with my own hands. I'm using the dead Jewish woman's phone to call you now. The mother says, may God protect you. 3, oh, this was the one where I'd read a little bit more about supposedly the rape thing. Maybe that wasn't part of the footage, or maybe that was people extrapolating too much. I'm not sure. But 3, Hamas terrorists enter a house where a small girl is seen hiding under the table. After some talking back and forth, they shoot and kill her as she hides under the table. Hard to say how old she is, but she's like 79 years old. Yeah, Jesus. Hold on. Somebody said, Destiny, why aren't you complaining about this reporting with no evidence? This, what do you mean reporting with no evidence? This was, I'm pretty sure over 100 international journalists were brought in to review video footage. Video footage is direct evidence. That's what video footage is. A lot of these videos are online. Yeah, they might be. Does Hamas have a TV crew following them around? No, they all have cell phones, bro. People record everything they do these days.
Yeah.
Here's the phone call you mentioned. Oh, is that actually Jesus? Oh, yeah, I heard I heard the GoPro thing. I don't know if I've seen that or that's true or not, but.
انا قاعد اكلمك من جوا ما بيصير افتح الواتس تبع كل وين شوف كيف القتله شوف كيف قتلت فيديو يابا ابنك قتل يهود هاي دخلت في الفيديو
الله اكبر ربنا يحميك يا رب ربنا يحميك يابا ربنا يحميك يابا
اكلمك من جوال يهوديه قتلتها وقتلت جوزها
الله اكبر الله اكبر ولله الحمد الله اكبر ولله الحمد
يابا افتح الواتس شوف كيف قتلت يابا افتح بدي عليك وقت كل وين روح ربنا يرحمك بالسلامه يابا شوف بتصير يابا يابا والله 10 قتلت 10 فيديو يابا يابا علي فين امي يما يحميك يما طول الليل ادعي لك 10 فيديو يما طول الليل 10 يما فيديو قتلت طول الليل ادعي لك طول الليل ادعي لك ربنا يرحمك بالسلامه يما يما طول الليل ادعي لي معاك يما ربنا يحميك يما
Yeah, I think this is why Israeli people kind of freak out when people... Not that that's a good justification to do one thing or another, but Jesus Christ. Destiny, the BBC interviewed that doctor who said it was a massacre. They probably also, I don't know why you think that makes it better, why it's okay, Dunebug, or why if you're trying to both sides it or whatever. I'm not sure why you're linking this. I don't know why you think I give a fuck. Like, it's clearly and obviously, I mean, I can say this retrospectively, and I was 100% accurate, but even without it being retrospective, you probably should have some sort of corroborating evidence if you're reporting that a nation is basically committing like a war crime terrorist attack. I don't think that's a very high threshold. To take 1 or 2 eyewitness reports of people who claim they saw F-35 shooting missiles at hospitals in the middle of the night with no other corroborating evidence is retarded.
Oh, damn. They took that? I was gonna go and take that. Fuck.
At Destiny, talk about the West Bank. Are you ever going to focus on Israel, or are you just going to talk endlessly about lefties? There's only so much I can talk about. I only have 1 month. Or, I'm sorry, 1 mouth. We've got 12 months in a year. Yeah, I'm sure I've talked about West Bank stuff before. Are you really uncomfortable that we're talking about like how absolutely insane Hamas is right now? Because the only thing you're going to focus on is on the Israeli shit. I've talked about West Bank stuff before. I don't really approve of the settlement stuff. I think most of the settler camps should probably be withdrawn. From what I understand, I don't know why. If you're really asked about or uncomfortable about the fact that Hamas are absolutely insane, you don't like seeing anything of that, you can always go and watch other streams. There's plenty of other sucks you can watch that will suck off any Arabic or brown person because they're like against U.S. foreign policy. There's so many other streamers you can watch. Okay. Why do other states who share the same religion and ideology not help Palestinians? They kind of do, but it's very, first of all, when we say Palestinians, you have to be careful to separate like people in the West Bank versus people from the Gaza Strip. And it's complicated. I think what we'll probably do, what I might do for this is, I think we're probably gonna do a couple days just like fleshing out like all of the back and forth between Israel and the Palestinians, I guess, for the past like probably 80 years and go back and forth to the conflicts to kind of map it out. For why people don't help them or do help them, it feels to me like people that help Palestinians don't really give a fuck about Palestinians. It seems like they kind of just want to kill people in Israel, like more or less. Like, I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think Iran really gives a fuck about Palestine. I think they just want to kill Israel. They just want to like wipe that country off the map. From what I've seen, I don't think anybody in the Middle East really likes Palestinians. They seem to be pretty insane anywhere they go. Palestinians got into Egypt. I think they tried to assassinate the leader. They failed. I think they failed, right? I think they did the same thing in Jordan. I think they did the same thing in Lebanon. They went into Lebanon and started stealing their territory so that they could like attack Israel from Lebanon. Palestinians are they everywhere they go, they kind of cause some insane shit to happen. So yeah, I don't think I'm pretty sure all 3 of those countries got mega burned. We'll go over those things, but yeah. At Destiny, no, come on. 95% of your content the past month has been very pro and understanding of Israel. Like, come on. Yeah, because I mean, that's the side that we're covering right now. I mean, I'm generally a pro-Israel person. Hold on,
Right.
Don't make any mistake. I think that Israel probably has a right to exist as a country. We just need to figure out like a stable status quo between Israel and Palestine, where Palestinians aren't being like by Israel in their existence. Like, that's the path forward. Yeah, let me be unambiguously clear about that. I think that Israel as a country should exist. I think there's good reason for it to exist. I think there's good reason for us to protect its existence. I fully 100% support that. Anybody that, any of you like sea to river people should go jump off a cliff, or you should go to Palestine and fight a Israeli missile of your own, hopefully. But obviously, as it's been happening, the status quo right now is not acceptable to where Palestinian people in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip are living a pretty life as a result of Israel trying to maintain their security status. I don't think that situation is untenable and probably not fair or not right to the Palestinian peoples. But Destiny, quick question. How do you justify Israel's existence given the historical setting? Very easily. Britain had a mandate for that territory post Ottoman Empire collapse, and then post World War II, they threw Israel up there, and that's how it goes. That's how the entire history of the world has been in terms of establishing borders. There was no Palestinian nation, and a group of people living in some areas doesn't give them an indefinite and permanent right to settle that land and to have a governing body recognize it into perpetuity. That's not how any border, any country, any nation, any state, any part of the world has ever gone. You never at any point have ever said, we're going to go back 80 years and say, because you people lived here. So this is not how anything goes. Countries exist at the behest of governments. Borders are drawn by, multiple governments, by bodies like the UN that recognize countries. That's how it goes. Yeah, that's it. It's super easy and super simple. That's like the easiest question. Anybody that's like, well, didn't Israel invade and kind of blah, blah, blah. There was no Palestinian nation there, okay? Palestinians were always parts of like other empires, other peoples, whatever. They didn't have a nation state of their own that was recognized by anybody. No, this is how it goes. You can't go back and turn the clock back and reset the borders or reset the composition of some countries just because some other people were there before, and it just doesn't work that way. You could do it. I mean, you could arguably do it if it's happening now. If it's happening like right now, people are trying to invade somebody or take something over, I think there's arguments against that. That's why I think, for instance, you can make an argument that there can be a Palestinian state that gets international recognition, but you can't go back 80 years and say, oh, well, you shouldn't be here or you should be because of this. It just doesn't work, yeah. Isn't that the entire basis for Israeli statehood going back 2,000 years? No, the basis for Israeli statehood was World War I and II, and it was the winning team with a mandate to decide how they wanted to divvy up or draw borders for the new territories. Which is, by the way, how every single border... Hold on. Destiny so confidently utters the most uncritical thought about this conflict. Every single border in the history of the world has been determined this way. What do you think? Where do you think every single country ever came from? It's been through conquest, and then after conquest, it's been countries drawing borders. Like that's every single part of world history.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people have been going to war with Israel for the past 80 years too. If they would have won those wars, they probably would have fucking killed every fucking Jew there. Like that probably would have, or most of them, Jesus. Have you done research into the Israeli blockade of Gaza since 2005? If so, do you think it's justified? I don't know. People in Gaza Strip are insane, okay? There are multiple countries in Europe that have donated like over 100. You know, they talk about like fresh water in Gaza and how they don't have like fresh water and it's all contaminated. Part of the reason for that, Europe has invested like over $100 million in trying to get pipes and clean water over there. Hamas literally films themselves. I don't have to like make this up. It's not propaganda. Hamas films themselves digging up the water pipes to make rockets. Okay, like Jesus Christ. Destiny's lost the plot on this. He's unhinged. True. Actually, I think the more sensible thing is the whole country of Israel should be removed and every single Jew should be deported to some other place. Based. At Destiny, I agree with you, but when I debate these pro-Palestinians, they say that the Brits displaced Palestinians to allow Jews to set their state. For instance, I mean, okay. If you want to have a realistic solution, here's another thing too, right? I think I said this before when I was in Sweden. When you're talking about borders today, okay, in some ways, history is kind of important, but in other ways, history doesn't actually matter at all. And I would challenge anybody, has there ever been a mass migration of people from some territory because somebody made the argument that, well, 50 years ago, this happened? I don't think that is, I could be wrong, but I don't think that has ever happened at any point in all of human history. When you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem or settle like conflicts, disputes with borders, with peoples, you have to take the situation as it is now and figure out how to solve it now. Nobody's going to be convinced going back 80 years and saying like, oh, well, you know, you guys should be like, oh, well, right, let's go, right? There's tons of people there right now, and you have to figure out like how to solve the issue of those people there right now. Destiny, has there ever been a country of people who give up their land when they've been there for generations? Without knowing the history, I'm gonna venture a guess that probably like all of Europe has had borders constantly changing throughout the past like multiple centuries of people that have been there for a long time and then gotten removed and killed and people like.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't give it up willingly though. It's not like they just gave it away. They obviously fought to protect it. Summon upgrade available. Alright, what's available? Ah, dope. Ooh. I should do that. For right now. That way I can get more money next time.
Why do you think the left is unable to denounce anti-Semitism? The left cannot criticize people of color. Hold on, wait a second. You guys are making my argument for me. At Destiny, the Turks killed 1.5 million Armenians and stole their land in 1920. Much worse than what happened in Palestine. Yes, but they're not. But notice how it's the killing part that makes that work, right? It wasn't the heated debate. It wasn't the passionate arguments of you should leave because we had this land first, right? Abba in YouTube chat saying you should accept Russia's invasion of Ukraine because of this take. How? That's the exact opposite of what I'm saying. What?
Damn it. How is it not prepared?
If Russia were to hold all of the land that they have now for 60 years or something, or for 50 years, and we're in like 2070 and they still have all of that and then Crimea, then I would probably agree. Like, they've had it for this long. Like, it's a whole bunch of Russian people living there now. Like, these are the recognized borders. Like, okay, like, that, it is what it is. I mean, I would say that, but like, this is a current invasion, so it's different, right? So that is in favor of Hamas keeping up or trying to take land then? Well, I mean, that's their goal, right? The goal of trying to take land from somebody. This is the way that you settle new territory and draw new borders is you conquer the land, you move in your people, and as long as your people are there long enough, typically people are like, okay, fuck it. And then people, that's it. That's your land, right? The Soviet Union did this. It was called Russification, I believe, right? Where they would try to move in, once they've taken some territory or whatever, I think they would try to move in a ton of their citizens. They would try to like change the culture, the language, and then eventually you have all these people here that like identify with Russia, and then boom, you have it. It's like, that's your shit, right? You ship in passports, you ship in people. Yeah. Could this trigger a World War III or a bigger war that might involve Western versus Middle East? Probably not. I think it would depend on if the U.S. got like actually militarily involved. That'd be my guess, but I don't know. Who knows? Do you believe that the Israeli government even wants a two-state solution? Maybe, but I mean, like the two-state solution meaning what? Like two-state solution where Palestine has their own independent government and military? I don't know. I don't know what kind of two-state solution both sides would agree to right now. But I would have to see. Like I don't even know what's on the table.
Boom. There we go.
Destiny, the Israelis explicitly ethnically cleansed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians post-UN mandate, and before the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, this was done illegally and prevented the Palestinians from ever having a voice in the direction Israel took. JSKL, hi. I read that before. Fuck, I wish I had this particular post on hand. Every single time, and your story is included in this that I'm about to say, every single time somebody points to a bad thing that Israel or Palestine has done, there was always a thing that happened right before it every single time. What you were posting that like Jewish people just came and started randomly murdering a bunch of, and ethnically cleansing a bunch of Palestinian people is not true. It was not random, it was not unprovoked. It's absolutely not true. I've seen that exact particular example brought up, and there's an exact particular series of events that was happening prior to this, because there's a YouTuber that made like a video explaining this, and then I saw somebody else with a counter Israel, a whole bunch of shit that he left out. Because the guy's basically saying like, oh yeah, well when Israel's here, they started indiscriminately murdering and ethnically cleansing Palestinians and blah, 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 which is not true. But I don't have all of that on hand right now. Maybe, yeah, tomorrow and the day after we'll start digging through all that. Have you looked at the majority report sub? No, I try not to. I don't want to kill myself. Although it is true, I believe, that after that conflict, I believe it was in 48, I think it was after that conflict, Israel or Jewish people did go through and like push the fuck out of a ton of Palestinian people after that conflict. That is true, but. Are there similar events that led to that?
All right, let's watch this.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got shape video masks. You can use different shapes to create completely different vibes and aesthetics. Or you can create your own graphic. I use the shape composition.
Because A, it's not your land. B, you mentioned Jerusalem.
You can't tell me that, please. Don't say that.
When it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I think I'm mostly emotionally sad.
Damn.
I think it's not fair that, you know, a country that is peaceful be in a situation where we have to be threatened.
Being an Arab girl living inside of the Israeli state, it's pretty hard for me to find exactly who I am.
We're the Palestinians. We still live under occupation, so we have no power.
I believe that every person, Jew, Christian, Muslim, should be full equal citizens under Israeli sovereignty.
We need just to end this conflict between us because we don't need the other generations to live the life that we live it.
All right, I'm gonna skip the beginning of
we
this.
continue to do what we did until now, it's probably going to stay. And we.
The first statement is, someone I know has died because of this conflict.
Is it everybody? Is that everybody who walked up?
IDF soldiers. It hit us hard, especially for my family.
Yeah, that chick does not look like she's
the Arabic nation.
Arabic.
That's really hard.
My friend, when I was 10 years old, Israeli sniper shoot at her on her head. So that was really hard for us.
No, I grew up during the Second Intifada. I carry a list with me of all my friends who were murdered in terror attacks. So I have a list of 27 people that were actually very close to me. In Israel, we have a Memorial Day, so I have always a dilemma to which grave to go to.
On 16th of January 2007, an Israeli soldier shot and killed my sister Abir. She was 10 years old from the first school, and I was 13.
Start battle.
We were 6 kids in the house. After that, we became 2 sisters and 3 brothers.
All of the people that I know have lost someone to the war in some way. And I think like grief is such a universal emotion. And like I want to hug all of you.
I serve in the IDF. I still serve in the Army Reserves, combat. I was very combat in the Second Intifada, and I feel your grief, and I understand it. But I have to say that I never got an order to shoot someone. The order was only to shoot if someone is a threat to your life or a threat to someone else's lives.
I also served in the IDF, and they really do just teach us to defend ourselves. If we're not defending ourselves and we do kill someone, we go to jail.
That's not true. That's not true.
I can tell you something. The soldier that killed my sister, he didn't spend 1 day in there.
Neither did
Why is it so epic? I don't know.
Stay 1 day in jail.
I just felt like saying that it was epic.
Is possible.
Basically, just because I say
think the
it
Palestinians
is.
they will not stop saying that we want a country. So in the end, if we got to the point that we have our state and they have their state, so no problem.
It's going to be better for us to live all of us together, which is no state like Palestinian, no state like Israeli, only together and having peace together. Like there is no walls and there is no checkpoints, which has happened right now.
Motherfuckers.
I'm with you. One state under Israel sovereignty, and everyone's full equal citizen. All right? Okay, but under Israeli sovereignty, because right now why is that a problem?
Why should it be on one? Why should one religion control it? Why
It's
can't
not
the
a
three?
religion. It's a nationality. It's my nationality.
So if
I mean, it is a religion too.
The Palestinian they control it. You can live under it.
No, because
so
A, it's not your land. B, you mentioned Jerusalem.
you can't tell me that, please. Don't say that.
I'm saying 100%. Palestine used to mean.
I can ask you one question. Yes. Please answer it. Your grandfather. You know where he is?
Yes.
Where he is?
To give me how many graves?
Where he is?
7 before.
7 before, I know. Yes.
Where?
7 before is in Hungary.
In Hungary. 9 before, he's in Palestine. Don't tell me it's not your land.
I'm saying it's not your land.
It's our land. And it will stay and will be.
Like, how do you determine this is our land and it's not their land based on what?
History, international law, interest, solidarity.
Yes. How about empathy?
I have empathy. I'm just not willing to give up on my identity and what I believe is mine.
I'm afraid of the other side.
When I say that I'm afraid, what I basically mean is I'm afraid of going into Gaza because I know that if I will go into Gaza, I might get shot, someone might kill me.
I think I hesitated a little bit because I don't think I'm afraid of the people on the other side. I think I'm afraid of the gap and sort of almost equally afraid
that,
of like,
yeah,
you know,
have my
that
strong
side
dude come and get it.
taking all of the responsibility for what is happening, or this side taking all of the responsibility for what is happening, which is obviously not working.
Well, that's fair enough. I don't believe that all Palestinians are terrorists because that doesn't make sense. But I do believe that who is in charge, they're leading the Palestinians to, you know, hating us and in a way that, you know, it is really unfair.
I'm against what you said. They're not the Islam, because Islam didn't say killing people or having blood. Don't belong that
But
to
what
the
about
Islam.
the radical Muslims? The radical Muslims that come and do these things, what do you have to say about
They're not
them?
part of us. We never accept them as Muslims because they're teaching hate. And in a way, I accepted what you just said about there's a big problem with our governments. They don't know how to talk to each other. And in my idea, I really think the people are the ones that should be talking to each other.
I agree, and I have to say I also don't think there's an issue with Muslims, but I disagree with you about the fact that it's about land. There are several peace talks. They were offered 97% of the land. 98 would have done it. I disagree.
But after deciding with the land, they came and they built more settlements.
What's wrong with Jews living in Judea?
That's not the problem. The problem is that we actually talked about this land being for these people, and in the end, when we see Israelis coming in and actually building houses, that's showing us you guys don't want peace.
I trust my sources of information on
Fuck no.
I serve in the IDF, so first of all, I trust myself and my officers. I do think
I
that a lot
don't
of the
trust
information I'm getting
anyone
is not
who's
accurate, which is why I try to
talking
compare
about
the
this
different,
conflict.
sources, and I also try to see it from people, what they think, what they feel.
I don't trust everything I see on the news, that's for sure. I do believe, again, there are two sides to every single story. But I do see things that are happening. For instance, you know, things like the rockets that are striking or the stabs that are happening. Those things I do trust because I can see that they're happening and they're just unfair.
Like I see the narrative being written as like I watch TV. I know how important and how powerful language is and how it can create reality. And like I can see it. I'm like, this is really dangerous. Like on both sides, it's really dangerous.
Overseas media that I see, they're always against Israel for things that are not necessarily our fault.
I find it very funny because we look at it and start saying that they're really with Israel, which is funny. I find it kind of funny. But no, I seriously do find the information that we're getting has more as an agenda to it from both sides.
I don't believe in social media. Like from the Israeli side, gonna support Israel. And from the Palestinian side, gonna support Palestinians. People are gonna be very confused, and I'm gonna be very confused about the reality.
So to say, but the question was the sources, so it doesn't have to be just social media and reports like this. Like I also trust the reports that the Israeli security.
I'm actually winning here. That's
They
good.
are gonna write it in their ideas, not about the reality and the situation, but their ideas. How do they see the situation? It's not really what happened.
I want political leaders on my side to make compromises for peace.
If we continue to do what we did until now, it's going to continue as it was now. And I don't see it getting better. Our leaders should have our lives and the best for us in their minds. And so it's not compromising. Like peace is never compromising.
The Palestinian politicians, they in the end, they want a peace for themselves and for their people. But they have no power because the power, it's not in their hands, it's in the other side.
I would like for us to compromise only if you will be able to compromise. It doesn't make sense that every time that we have a war, it's always started by your side. The other day I just heard about, over 1,800 acres of crops have been burnt by, Hamas, who have been sending it over to Israel. Instead of, spending all that money in order to ruin us, why don't they spend it on taking care of Palestine?
One second, you're talking about Hamas, you're talking about Gaza. Gaza is so far from us. We don't know what's going over there. We don't know. If you can ask me about the West Bank, I'm gonna answer, and I think you as well.
But here's the way I see it when you're talking about compromise. Hamas's charter says murder the Jews wherever they are. In the PA, that are hold on. But the PA that are the moderates.
Going back to Hamas.
So,
I mean, the Jews are doing the same thing now.
Let me finish. The Palestinian Authority that are the moderates, they're saying it's a death sentence if you sell your house to a Jew. Are there racist people in Israel? Of course. Are there racist people everywhere in the world? Yes. But we condemn people who are acting violently, and the other side glorifies it.
Violence is sometimes justified.
Yeah, in
If
self-defense.
you're going to attack Israel, then Israel is going to defend themselves. And that means when it comes to
But the thing is that it's hard to know if they're actually defending themselves or not.
Muslims, we have to, because if we don't, then there's not going to be a state of Israel anymore.
I don't think it's a matter of Israeli Arabs or Jewish Christians. Sometimes in life you have to use violence. I hope it will be close to zero as possible. But if I see someone about to murder someone else, I think it's okay for me to use violence to stop that. I think violence is not allowed for a political goal. I think that's a bad place to use violence. I prefer talking and having a discourse.
Okay, I didn't grow up with a lot of violence, with zero violence. But what I went to say, the same as you said, who comes to my house to break the door to take my father, of course I will defend for myself. So it's called a violence. But I want to defend for myself.
First of all, I am against violence 100%. It's a freaking circle that's going to keep on happening over and over again.
For me, if you're gonna react for the violence with violence, so here we go. We're having like the same problems, the same generation who's raised with hatred and violence and love blood, which is not acceptable.
Having a homeland for my people is important to me.
I think that Israel needs to be our homeland, because if we won't have a homeland, no one else is going to accept us anywhere else, especially because there's a lot of racism and anti-Semitism as well. So if we're not going to be here, where are we going to go?
Okay, for me as a Muslim, the Holy Land, it's why it's so important. First of all, because I was born here. I have no place, another
I'm having
place.
fun with this.
Every single person around the world.
Oh, Mitt Romney on the Republican Party. That's Mitt Romney.
Dr. Drew and my wife Susan here, we want to show you something. My hunger settles a little bit. Is that something you're finding with people too?
In the beginning.
Let's see what
As
he has
you've no
to
doubt
say.
heard, there's much debate about politicians in Washington remaining in office into their 80s and even 90s. Last month, Senator Mitt Romney said he wasn't going to be one of them, announcing he'll retire at the end of his term. But until then, he's got plenty to do and say, and he's talking with Nora O'Donnell.
Boom.
We may have to pull the senator for a call with the president, because we're about to get.
Oh, yes, I have a call with the president.
It's not every interview that gets interrupted by a call from the President of the United States.
You have to be on a secure line.
But that's what happened when we sat down with Senator Mitt
Biden
Romney and
would
his
be
wife,
talking.
Ann. President Biden phoned last week on the eve of
'Cause he's
his
a
diplomatic
fucking
mission to Israel. The
rhino,
Republican had just
bro.
returned from his own visit.
It was heartbreaking, particularly to meet with the families of the hostages. Their lives are entirely different. One of the people said, "You don't understand. We live in a different world than you do."
At age 76, Mitt Romney says he still cares deeply about what is happening around the world.
info.
And here at home, he worries deeply about the future of his party.
You were once the party's nominee, and now you're a pariah in the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's saying it in a gentle way. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no question. I don't really have a home in my party. I come from a tradition of, Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain. Those are the people that have shaped our party. Anti-Putin, anti-Russia, anti-authoritarians, anti-Kim Jong-un. Character counts. The character of our leaders makes a difference, and it shapes the character of our country. That's the party I've come from, and I don't recognize that in the great majority of our party today, and that for me is very troubling.
This is Romney's first interview since announcing he would not seek re-election.
I think it's time for guys like me to get out of the way and have people in the next generation step forward, because they're going to be shaping the world they're going to be living in.
Without having to worry about how voters will see him, he's now concerned about how history views his legacy. That's why he participated in a new biography by McKay Coppins, published by Scribner, part of CBS parent company Paramount Global.
And what did you say when your husband said, "I'm giving over my private diary to a journalist"? I didn't know it. I might have said, "That's not a good idea."
Oops.
Hey, you maybe want to look through it before and take out a few things.
Now that I've read the book, it's like, oh, did I really say that about this person? Oh, my goodness.
The book
I
is
do not
revealing,
like
with
Mitt
unvarnished
Romney.
opinions and stories of what happens behind closed
so
doors
annoying.
in the famously clubby United States Senate.
Privately, what do you hear from fellow Republicans in the Senate?
I don't think I've heard a single member of my caucus, the Republicans in the Senate, say, you know, Donald Trump is great. Aren't we lucky to have him as our leader? Donald Trump represents a failure of character, which is changing, I think, in many respects, the psyche of our nation.
I
and the heart of our
guarantee
nation.
that there
And that's
is
something
people
which
who said that.
Takes a long time, if ever.
Maybe not the ones
In a
who
way,
he
he
talks
almost was like a
to
spy
because he's a
behind enemy
fucking.
lines.
Romney gave Coppins, a staff writer for The Atlantic, hundreds of text messages and emails. The two met close to 50 times, often late at night, when Romney would tell all.
I think there was something therapeutic
wasn't
for
even
him
close.
in being able to sit down and review his entire
I don't
career,
think I lost
his
really
life.
that
This
many
was
men
not
at all.
an authorized
Yeah, I don't think I
biography in the
did lose
sense
a
that,
man.
he had any editorial control over the final product. So there were some meetings that felt like therapy sessions. There were some meetings that felt almost confessional in nature.
You were quoted in the book as saying, a very large portion of my party really doesn't believe in the Constitution. How did you come to that damning conclusion?
He doesn't
When
believe
former
in the
President Trump
Constitution,
said
bro.
we should set aside the Constitution and reappoint him as president. Why, you had
He did
Republicans
not
cheering.
say
It's
that.
like, wait a second. This is the leader of our party saying we should put aside the Constitution. How can you believe you're following the Constitution if that's the case?
Romney, who barely escaped the mob on January 6, 2021, was at the Capitol that day, despite the concerns of his wife, Anne.
I do get death threats. And her feeling was I would not be safe and I shouldn't go. And I said, well, this is a constitutional moment. This is a time when I have to be there.
Do we weigh our own political fortunes more heavily than we weigh the strength of our republic, the strength of our democracy, and the cause of freedom?
A year earlier, Romney had been the lone Republican senator to vote to impeach then-President Trump for pressuring Ukraine's president to find damaging information on political rival Joe Biden.
Mr. Romney. Mr. Romney, guilty.
It's a stance that would have
What
been
a piece of
familiar to
shit.
his father, George Romney, one-time governor of Michigan. In 1964, when Republicans nominated far-right Senator Barry Goldwater for president,
Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
A/B testing is everything in advertising. The more you test, the more winners you find. Ad Creative AI allows you to generate hundreds of conversion-focused ad creatives, text, and audiences in seconds using its unique artificial intelligence.
George Romney took a stand against his own party.
The strongest personality on earth cannot deal with the problems of this nation except upon the basis of correct principles.
What did you learn from your dad?
My dad is my life hero. As a Republican governor, he refused to endorse the nominee of his party, Barry Goldwater, for president because he thought he was weak on civil rights and extremism. So that's the person who I try and model myself after, and I'm not quite there.
His influence is in every part of our life, and we just still adore him, miss him.
Family remains at the center of the Romneys' life. They have 25 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. The senator says his wife is his closest advisor, and as we discovered in his private office, she's always close at hand.
Normally, there's a life-size cardboard cutout of Anne that stands right there, and they have taken it away because they're afraid you'd see it. There it is. See this? And so they gave me this, and we had a good laugh about it. But then I said, don't throw it away. I want to keep it. So now I have it in my closet.
So sometimes when you're just sitting here working away, do you just kind of leave the door open?
Well, the door is always open, and that happens to be the men's room right next to it. So I can assure you that from time to time, I am going to go by that, all right?
The book reports on a phone call to Anne from Oprah Winfrey, alleging that Oprah said if Mitt ran for president, she would be his running mate. Anne Romney tells a different story.
You got a call from Oprah. What did she say?
She was trying to figure out how Mitt could do an independent run. I remember trying to explain to her that that doesn't work politically. I was the one that suggested, well, Oprah, why don't you run with him and see how that works? I don't think it was really her thought at all, because I don't think she really wants to be involved in any kind of politics in an active way.
As for Mitt Romney's next move,
no way you'll run for president in 2024.
And I can't imagine any circumstance. Perhaps
that.
I mean, he already
that
lost
work
against
politically.
fucking.
I was the one that
He already
suggested,
lost against
well, Oprah, why don't you
Obama.
run with him and see how that works? I don't think it was really her thought at all, because I don't think she really wants to be involved in any kind of politics in an active way.
What the fuck?
he is
Did
running
she
mate.
just say?
Anne Romney tells a different story.
You got a call from Oprah. What did she say?
She was trying to figure out how Mitt could do an independent run. I remember
Yeah,
trying to
see,
explain to her that
her trying to
that doesn't
get
work
Mitt Romney to
politically.
do
I
a
was the one that
independent
suggested,
run
well, Oprah, why don't you
is
run
so
with him and see
fucking
how that
like
works?
it just
I don't think it was really
shows
her
that
thought
he's a
at all, 'cause I
fucking
don't think she really wants to be
rhino, you know?
involved in any kind of politics in an active way.
As for Mitt Romney's next move,
no way you'll run for president in 2024.
And I can't imagine any circumstance. Perhaps if Godzilla comes in and removes all the other candidates and so forth, but other than Godzilla stepping in, no, I'm not running for president, not giving it any thought.
But he is thinking about how future generations will judge his time in public service.
How do you want your children to remember you?
Well, they probably already have an image of who I am. But my descendants, I hope, will walk away saying, okay, granddad or great-granddad had...
They're going to be like, he was a fucking loser.
I'd like them to also know that my life is not defined by winning and losing elections. My life is defined by my relationship with my family and my faith. That's what I live for. Those other things are part of the life experience, but that's the defining measure of my life.
Well said.
You are this faction's only ally. I want to see where these people are. Ooh. Enter war on side of ally. Might as well keep this. Might as well have some fun.
About a month ago, we covered some excerpts from Mitt Romney's upcoming memoir, Romney, A Reckoning, in which the retiring Republican senator put his fellow Republican colleagues on blast. Now, that biography was written, actually, it's not a memoir, my bad. It is a biography. It's written by McKay Coppins. And today, Coppins published a list of Romney's best insults from the time that he spent interviewing Romney and writing this book. So let's dive in. Romney on Ron DeSantis. There's just no warmth at all. Which is the least, I think, offensive thing you can say about Mitt Romney. I think Mitt Romney knows that Mitt Romney has that problem. I mean, I'm sorry, Ron DeSantis knows that that he has that problem.
Yes.
Now, Romney on DeSantis posing for selfies with Iowa voters. He looks like he's got a toothache.
That's a really good way of describing it. Nice job by Romney.
Okay.
Hot dog, I didn't know he had it in him.
I mean, you're gonna bring up the hot dog? Here it is.
Well, as you all know, today is National Hot Dog Day. And perhaps you also know that hot dog is my favorite meat. I love hot dogs. I love them
in and around
buns.
his
I
mouth.
love them outside of buns. I love them with baked beans. I just like hot dogs. It's the best, best meat there is, without question. So to all of you who, like me, are celebrating National Hot Dog Day, congratulations to you, and may there be many, many more hot dogs served in our wonderful land.
You know, the theory was that Mitt Romney put out that great video for us, embarrassing video for him, because he's, a United States senator. Maybe he's getting like bribes, legal bribes, of course, from like the hot dog lobby. But no, homeboy's retiring. He just decided to put that video out because I guess he really does love hot dogs. Perhaps you've heard.
This is going to be my Moby Dick, figuring out why Mitt Romney made that video.
We need to know.
Okay.
We deserve to know. I will say though, that is the most a sitting member of the Senate has done for me in enriching my life and making it better in a long time.
100%. We have more devastating quotes from Romney about other Republicans, but that video, there's always an extra nugget in it that you didn't catch. So this time I caught, perhaps you also know that hot dog is my favorite meat. How would we know that, Mitt? How would we know that?
Perhaps.
Even if it was true. Okay. Well, anyway, congratulations to all of you on National Hot Dog Day, but let's continue with the story.
So now he starts getting real spicy. All right, let's get to his feelings on Newt Gingrich, in which he says, a smug know-it-all, smarmy, and too pleased with himself.
You know what? Romney might be smarter than I realized. He's nailing every one of these.
Totally. Romney on Rick Perry, this one's brutal. Republicans must realize that we have to have someone who can complete a sentence.
Yeah, no, look,
What the fuck do you mean?
Look, Rick Perry was nominated to be the Secretary of Energy.
I guess I don't know who Rick Perry is.
They mainly take care of nukes. Like that's the main thing that the Energy Department does. And he went in front of Congress in his confirmation hearings. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. You're like, oh God, that's so embarrassing. Oh, they're so dumb. Most of these politicians, they're supposed to be dumb. They're basically just waiters for the donors. So they're like, okay, here, come here, idiot. Come, take this money and do what we tell you to do. And so the dumber they are, the more useful they are. So Mitt Romney's an old school Republican where they were rational, smart. They just wanted more tax cuts and more money, right? So don't get me wrong. Mitt Romney, intensely greedy, right? But in other ways, he's perfectly smart, ran a business that was kind of brutal, but made a lot of money, et cetera.
Was the original, implementer of the Affordable Care Act in Massachusetts?
Yeah, and by the way, you should give Mitt Romney a lot of credit for that, because Obamacare just flat out copied Romney Care.
Totally, yep.
And so, if you like the Affordable Care Act, thank Mitt Romney and hot dogs.
Okay, there's more. So let's get to his feelings on Ted Cruz, who he describes as frightening, scary, a demagogue.
All 100% true.
Mike Huckabee, a huckster, a caricature of a for-profit preacher.
Can we get more senators to retire so they could finally be honest?
But like, how long has he been dreaming about this day?
Oh, totally.
Right? Just surrounded by people he can't stand, dreaming about the day he gets to retire and tell the world how he really feels about these people.
100%. Look, if you're an old school rational Republican who's just a little greedy, right? Like that's the way the Republicans used to be. I'm just a little greedier than you, that's all. Give me more tax cuts, right? Imagine how infuriated you have to be in a room filled with circus clowns and jugglers and
ones who
lunatics,
actually
and
have
you're
a fucking
looking around going,
backbone.
Is this for real? Is there anyone in this room
Who aren't just
that
trying
has
to get paid
an IQ
off
in the
all the
double digits?
time?
Anyone? Bueller?
Romney on Rick Santorum, a name and a person I haven't thought about in a long time. Sanctimonious, severe, and strange.
God, man, this guy needs to be an analyst. Hey, Mitt, call me.
I'm sure CNN will give you a job. Okay,
Yeah,
they'll give
for sure.
anyone who served in government a job.
But we
unless you're progressive.
You could. Rebel headquarters got space. Come on, Mitt.
What the
I mean,
fuck?
that could be fun.
Yeah,
that could
see?
obviously there's a lot we disagree with him on, but
Yeah.
he seems reasonable and.
Look, I'll
He's
tell you
a
right now. we'll
fucking
invite Mitt Romney on
rhino,
the show.
bro.
Come on the show, Mitt.
Come on, Mitt.
We'll give you hot dogs.
Yeah, we'll send you free hot dogs, Mitt. Come on the show.
Okay, Romney on John Kasich. Wow, even John Kasich, who I think out of all of them is like the least offensive one, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Lack of thoughtfulness, lack of attentiveness, ego. No wonder he and Chris Christie spark.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know John Kasich. Since he's so right about the others, I tend to believe him, but I haven't seen that in Kasich. Kasich is a lot like Romney, old school Republican. Just give me the money, Lebowski. He's one of those guys. But Kasich otherwise does not appear to be a lunatic in any way, shape, or form, which like you have to clarify with a Republican politician these days. He's a Republican, but he's not a lunatic, don't worry. Like that's a sentence you have to say with any Republican politician that hasn't lost their mind.
I think every aspiring author, every journalist who wants to publish a book should approach every politician who's looking to retire and ask to write a biography about them.
Can I just say, Mo Brooks was leaving the House and he was running for the Senate, and Trump didn't give him the endorsement, and then he was spiraling downward. So it looks like he's going to get out of politics. And Mo Brooks is a very right-wing Republican. We do not agree with him on anything.
Mo Brooks, Mo Problems.
Literally, what it's the title of that section in Justice is Coming.
That's right.
That's where it got stuck in your head. tyt.com/justice to get the book. Okay. Anyways, but Mo Brooks, when he thought he was on his way out, like had this amazing confession where he said, oh yeah, you have to purchase committee chairmanship. They cost about $1 million. And since regular people can't give it to you, you have to go get it from the industry that you're pretending to regulate. And then you have to do a quid pro quo. And he literally said quid pro quo. And then you have to make sure you don't regulate them and that you just serve them. And so he explained exactly how corruption works. So the minute they start to retire, they're like, oh yeah, we're all crooks and criminals. And lunatics and idiots, right? It's amazing. So yes, Mo, call me too.
I just got word from our supervising producer here at the main show. Kate Bettino does not want to invite Mitt Romney on the show. As someone who's a fierce animal rights activist, she reminded us that Mitt Romney had decided to put a dog in a crate on top of a vehicle that he was driving with his family to go to some trip.
What?
The dog was so scared that it had diarrhea, and they decided to like clean up the situation and put the dog back in the crate, back on top of the car.
What? Let me see this. Who is this? Mitt Romney putting a damn it. Oh, whoops. Let's see this.
Stunning.
When was this? 11
Sleek,
years ago?
Powerful. It's got skills and it's a showstopper. I have a yellow lab named Winston. I
Holy
would
crap,
no
this
sooner
is so-
put him in a kennel on the roof of my car than I would one of my children. Question. What were you thinking?
This is a completely airtight kennel and mounted on the top of our car. He
Bro,
climbed
that's
up there
so
regularly,
crazy.
Enjoyed himself. He was in a kennel at home a great deal of time as well. We loved the dog. It was where he was comfortable. We had 5 kids inside the car. My guess is he liked it a lot better in his kennel than he would have liked it inside.
That's so
Throw
funny.
The kitchen sink at him. They even brought
Wow.
the dog thing back.
He looks so much different
And by the way, Romney was
back
lying there.
then.
He had made a windshield for the dog. Thanks God. But it was not airtight. In fact, the dog pooped on the car and it ran down the back window. It's a
I wanna
famous story.
see the
It's all over
video
the
of
Boston
it,
Globe. They don't even
of
deny it. It's a
this.
story they got from the Romney family. And his oldest son was in the back. He's like, Dad, there's poo running down the back. How could it be airtight? What is that? And besides which, if it was airtight, the dog would be dead. It was a 12-hour ride from Boston to Canada. They had the dog on the top the whole time. Look, some people might think that that's atrocious. Some people might think it's not a big deal. But
That's fucking
I mean, it does kind of make him the Michael Vick of Republican presidential candidates. In fact, there are now guys going around. There's a new group called Dogs Against Romney. Let's show you a picture of one of the guys who is going around following Mitt Romney everywhere, trying to remind everybody that he put the dog on top of the roof. All right, we have a renowned dog lover in the studio, Ben Mankiewicz. What's your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, what's with some people might think this is a terrible story. It's a horrific story. Nobody would do it. JR wouldn't do it. He hates animals.
Okay.
JR,
So that's
who
really
the fuck is
interesting,
JR?
Because the guy who originally wrote the story for the Boston Globe says that the Romney family told him and retold him that story because they thought it would humanize Romney. Like, oh, look at this fun family trip, and they had so many kids, they couldn't fit him in the station wagon, so, you know, they were debating whether to put the youngest son up there or the dog. No, I'm kidding.
All right, I'll accept that.
And so it was a cute story about putting the dog on the roof. So apparently in the Romney mind that might be helpful to them.
And by the way, after the fecal matter splattered all over the car, they pulled over. Romney hosed down the car and the dog and put him back in the luxury suite on top of the Subaru and headed to the Great White North. Prick.
He did.
Yeah.
No, he's
and the answer, I'm sorry, that he gives to Chris Wallace there is, I'm pretty sure the dog would rather have been on top of the car, sealed off, than in the family with the 5. No, the dog wants to be with the family, idiot.
Yeah.
Does he know anything about dogs? The dog would have loved being with the 5 kids in the car.
Yeah.
And then the other interesting thing about this that Ben's bringing up is this, Mitt Romney's got this weird detachment from, I don't want to say reality, but like to him, he's like a robot, right? So he's like, okay, dog pooped, obviously. What do? We clean the dog, we put him back up. Okay, we're efficient. We're back on the road. We don't want to get there in 13 hours. We want to get there in 12 hours. And you know, he has these weird interactions with people. Again, in the last campaign, he'd gone up to a woman when he was campaigning, and he's like, hey, how you doing? She's like, okay. And he's like, oh, you haven't had a chance to put your face on yet, right? Referring to makeup. And she's like, no, I did.
Jesus. By the way, one final thing about the dog before we get off to how Mitt Romney has treated Homo sapiens. And you know what happened? Eventually the dog died.
On the trip, right?
No. I mean, where's that dog today?
Yeah, dead.
Dead.
Dead as a doorknob.
Dead.
Is it?
They didn't kill the dog. I'm sure he died of natural causes at some point.
It was 1983. We don't know. We don't know.
Anything could happen.
Yeah.
You know what? Thanks for giving Newt Gingrich another idea.
Totally, yeah.
And then they're going to get into a fight over that. Gingrich's like, well, what? I'm just asking questions, man. Where's the fucking dog?
Who names a dog Seamus?
Well, it was an Irish setter, so they're
Yeah.
like,
No, it's actually a pretty good name. As I said it out loud, I was like, nah, it's kind of cute.
nah, yeah, fail. All right. I mean, who names a dog Notch?
If I had a dog named Seamus, I would kill it.
You and Romney both.
Yeah.
You, Romney, and Vic.
What the hell?
So,
I thought I had a.
When you have these woke revolutions, it requires all of us at some point to say, no, not going to do this. A nation has to have civic education. They have to know what the Constitution is. They have to know what the First Amendment is. They have to have some idea who the people were that died at Shiloh, what Okinawa was about, who Andrew Jackson was, who Lincoln was, who Harriet Tubman was. If you don't have models of your past...
Well, as you all know, today is National Hot Dog Day. And perhaps you also know that hot dog is my favorite meat.
All right. That's funny. What the fuck?
Hot dog. Okay, I know, but how long are we going to hold that over the guy's head?
Nah,
Give me some
she's
more
got a good
quotes. Give me
point.
some more quotes. Let's negotiate.
Well, those were the newest quotes, but I will remind you of what he had to say about former Vice President Mike Pence. Romney had long been put off by Pence's pious brand of Trump sycophancy. No one, he told me, has been more loyal, more willing to smile when he saw absurdities, more willing to ascribe God's will to things that were ungodly than Mike Pence.
I mean, tell me it isn't true. Tell me one thing he hasn't gotten right so far, other than the dog on the roof.
He's also not a fan of freshman senator J.D. Vance. As Romney surveyed the crop of Republicans running for Senate in 2022, it was clear that more Josh Hawleys were on their way. Perhaps most disconcerting was J.D. Vance, the Republican candidate in Ohio. Quote, "I don't know that I can disrespect someone more than J.D. Vance," end quote, Romney told me.
Ah, man, Romney Unchained is my new favorite politician. Again, I don't agree with him. We spent a lot of time in 2012 telling you why he should not be president. And even the old school Republicans, I wouldn't vote for. But these are killer quotes because they are clearly, obviously true.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.
House Majority Whip Tom Emmer has dropped out of the race for Speaker. House Republicans nominated him for the position just earlier today. He won against a crowded field of candidates after multiple
What am I supposed to do
votes
here?
behind closed doors. It's been 3 weeks since lawmakers voted to oust then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now. Nicole, what is happening on the Hill? I mean, for a split second there, Tom Emmer was about to become a household name. It looked like he was making progress, and then all of a sudden, he's out.
Damn it.
You know, I don't know that we know the answer to this. I mean, look, this has been a very chaotic process. We did try to speak with Tom Emmer as he raced out of this hallway behind me. He did not speak at all to reporters when we asked him
Yeah,
whether
so Tom Emmer dropped out of the bid for the House Speaker. Decline.
was in the race or out of the race, but we have subsequently learned from members who were inside the room that he has withdrawn from this race. And this comes down to simply not having the votes, which has been the issue that has plagued just about every other person who has tried and failed to win the gavel. I spoke briefly with Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. I asked her if one of the deciding factors for her was the fact that Tom Emmer actually voted to certify the 2020 election, which many Republicans, including Greene, did not. And she said that did play a factor in her decision to oppose him. At the end of the day, there were about 10 to 20 members who were not backing Emmer. He spent several hours trying to talk to some of them. Obviously, it does not appear that he was successful if he has now made this decision to drop out. But certainly that vote certifying the 2020 election appears to be just one of several factors that some Republicans are citing for their opposition to him.
Nicole, certainly related to that, I want to ask you about the Trump factor, because the former president weighed in on Emmer and his potential
Majority Leader Scalise, can you please stop for a second? Sorry about that. That was just Majority Leader Steve Scalise who was walking by. Obviously, we weren't able to get him to stop. We were trying. But, you know, he has tried to be optimistic about this process and said that, you know, they are trying to work through this. But, again, this begs some real questions about the Republican Party. You know, just last week I asked Kevin McCarthy, the former speaker who was ousted, who, you know, this started this entire process, if the Republican conference was broken. And his answer, simply put, was yes. You know, and so I think this really is a moment where Republicans are going to have to do some soul searching here because because as one member put it to us earlier today, they've gone through their top three. They've gone through Steve Scalise, who just walked past me. They have gone through Jim Jordan, who is considered a rising star, one of their top Republicans in the party. And they have also now gone through Tom Emmer, who's a number 3 Republican in the House. I do just want to bring in
Tom
Congressman
Emmer's.
Dusty Johnson, who has
I'm
actually
glad
been
that
one
he
of the
dropped out.
brokers, in some of these discussions as Republicans who have been trying to work through these various series of candidates. And Congressman, I just want to get your reaction first and foremost to Whip Emmer dropping out of this race.
Tom Emmer would have been a good speaker.
No,
knows
he
how to count
wouldn't
votes.
have.
He knows how to listen to members. He knows how to put together a vision for a plan for a team that needs to move forward together. It's unfortunate. In the same way it was unfortunate that Jim Jordan had to get out and that Steve Scalise had to get out and that Kevin McCarthy was thrown out. These are all
But, sir,
symptoms.
this is more than unfortunate. I mean, you don't have a leader and you can't seem to agree on one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you and I can play the semantics game, you know, unfortunate, really unfortunate, terribly unfortunate, tragic. The bottom line is we just have to get a game plan moving forward. I mean, I'm frustrated, as every American should be. I think this reminds me how terribly irresponsible it was for the 8 chaos agents on my side of the aisle to work with 208 Democrats to put the House into this degree of absolute unpredictability. We're in a bad spot. Now, that being said, smart guys and smart gals need to roll up our sleeves. We need to quit complaining. We got to find a way through this darkness.
What is that game plan?
I think we need to remind everybody that until we can come to an agreement, the House
Who
is
the
shut
fuck is
down.
over at
While the House
Biomass
is shut down,
Police?
we can't secure the border. We cannot help our friend Israel. We cannot take care of Americans who have needs today. We cannot try to avoid a government shutdown, which is staring us
Whoa,
in the
what
face
is this,
in just
dude?
a few weeks. We have real work to get done, and unfortunately, too many people in that room are more comfortable saying no. They'd rather win the fight and keep a shutdown than find a way forward.
And just yesterday, you told me you think the odds of a shutdown come November
All right,
17th
I need to attack
is
that
increasing
guy.
based on this situation.
Yeah, shutdowns are stupid. They don't save any money. We're $33 trillion in debt. Clearly, we need a fiscal responsibility reset, and I back a lot of mechanisms to get that done. Some
This
of them
guy
successfully.
will probably lose.
Most of the
Let's
people want to
see.
shut down the government say, oh, we need to do that to save money. It does not save a nickel. It costs us billions. And unfortunately, because Republicans in the House don't have a leader, we don't have a strategy for how to get conservative wins while keeping the government open.
In terms of the path forward, I mean, is now the time to maybe revert back to this idea of empowering Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry?
One concern is that to get that done, I think Democrat votes would be necessary. And there's not a lot of trust right now. I mean, this 3 weeks of chaos was done absolutely, first and foremost, by 8 hardline Republicans, some of whom love chaos. But they couldn't have done it on their own. And
But do you need to start having those conversations with Democrats? I know they have indicated a willingness to work with Republicans.
Part of the issue is when you have Democrats who are willing to embolden some of the most extreme voices in our conference 3 weeks ago, can we trust them not to do the same thing a week from now or a week from then? There is not a lot of trust. They frankly have not shown a willingness to put the stability of the House over their own partisan ends. And until there is some trust built there, I think Republicans are going to continue to work to get to 217 votes inside that room.
And then just very quickly, yes or no, I know the former president put out a Truth Social post calling Whip Emmer a rhino. Do you think that is ultimately what broke his bid today?
When you have 221
He is a
Republicans
rhino.
and you have to get 217 votes,
He wants to
any
fund
4 members,
Ukraine.
any more than 4
He
members can sink that.
voted for the same marriage.
Do you think the former president is to blame in this?
I don't know that it could
protection
help,
bill.
right? But you know, Tom Emmer, he was making some
He
progress.
is a fucking
I do
rhino.
think the former President Trump's comments could not have helped.
All right, thank you so much, Congressman Dusty Johnson. Appreciate you for stopping. We get back to you.
Nicole, before I let you go, I have to ask what you think about the Trump factor, because the congressman there wasn't willing to say that, yes, it was because of Trump, but the timing doesn't appear to be just coincidental. So can anyone win here if they don't have the support of the former president?
Yeah, well, it's a really double-edged sword if you think about it, Rija, because just last week the former president endorsed Jim Jordan, and it was a full-throated endorsement, and that was not enough to get him over the finish line. But yet, when he put out this Truth Social post criticizing him, and keep in mind the former president made clear just yesterday he was going to withhold his support, or he was going to wait for a while. But
Yeah,
once
fuck
he put
you,
out that
bro.
Truth Social post, we
Fuck
did see
you. All right, what should we do here?
the momentum start to change. And now, of course, Republicans down
I
a
needed
third
money.
candidate in this race with a question of who, if anyone, will be next.
All right, Nicole, thank you. Love seeing you play with the live ball and bringing us the very latest from the Hill.
Transgender. It's made very, very cool through the media, through TikTok, through Reddit.
I don't think it's
I
cool.
asked on social media for some of your hottest philosophical takes. We're going to go through some of what I received. I think I want to give them a rating on how spicy they are. And I remember once being in a restaurant where the options for the food were mild, spicy, very spicy, and Indian spicy. So I think I'm going to borrow that measurement. So let's find out if your takes are mild. I suppose minty is the opposite of spicy. Spicy or Indian spicy. God shows his mercy to sinners by sending them to hell. This sounds kind of weird on the face of it. Surely if God was being as merciful as possible, he'd allow even unrepentant sinners to get into heaven. But there is this idea in Christianity that hell isn't so much a punishment for sinners, but rather the natural place where sinners would most like to end up. That is, minty is the opposite of spicy. Spicy or Indian spicy. God shows his mercy to sinners by sending them to hell. It sounds kind of weird on the face of it. Surely if God was being as merciful as possible, he'd allow even unrepentant sinners to get into heaven. But there is this idea in Christianity that hell isn't so much a punishment for sinners, but rather the natural place where sinners would most like to end up. That is, they've made their own decision that they don't want to be with God, and God simply says, as C.S. Lewis had it, thy will be done. But I do think that this brand spicy. God shows his mercy to sinners by sending them to hell. It sounds kind of weird on the face of it. Surely if God was being as merciful as possible, he'd allow even unrepentant sinners to get into heaven. But there is this idea in Christianity that hell isn't so much a punishment for sinners, but rather the natural place where sinners would most like to end up. That is, they've made their own decision that they don't want to be with God, and God simply says, as C.S. Lewis had it, thy will be done. But I do think that this branding of hell as not a punishment for unrepentant sinners, but rather just a natural place where sinners end up as a result of their own choice. So if anything, it's God's love in action. It's a fairly common one in Christianity, so I think I'm going to give this mild. The Catholic Church is correct in everything she teaches. Of course, I don't think that this is correct, and I think it's quite a bold claim, but in terms of its spiciness and controversy as a Catholic, I don't think it's particularly strong, so again, I'm going to have to give this a mild. I must say I would find it difficult to defend the claim that the Catholic Church is correct in everything that she teaches, given that she has a history of, well, getting things wrong. For example, in the trial of Galileo, this famous scientist was punished for not just, as some Catholics like to claim, presenting his worldview without evidence or something like that, but specifically for the wrongness of his belief. I'm quoting here from the sentencing of Galileo. That the sun is the center of the world and motionless is a proposition which is philosophically absurd and false and formally heretical for being explicitly contrary to Holy Scripture. So the Church at one point, at least, thought that heliocentrism was philosophically absurd and false and contrary to Holy Scripture. If it's right in everything that it says, is this still true? I think I said something to upset the guy upstairs. The Eucharist is about ritual cannibalism and might have actually happened after Jesus' death, and can also explain why the body disappeared from the tomb and was never found afterwards. Indian spicy. Okay, it's time to get dark. I didn't choose to be born, therefore I should have the right to upstairs. The Eucharist is about ritual cannibalism and might have actually happened after Jesus' death, and can also explain why the body disappeared from the tomb and was never found afterwards.
That's so fucking
Indian
stupid.
Spicy. Okay, it's time to get
That's
dark.
the dumbest
I didn't
shit
choose
I
to be
ever
born,
fucking heard.
therefore I should have the right to end my life, legally speaking. I have to say that I broadly agree with this. I think that if you have such thing
I
as a
don't
right
think
to
that you
life,
should
that must
end your
entail
life,
a
but
right
I
to
guess
not
that
live,
you
just
do.
as having a right
I
to
think
freedom
that
of
you
speech
should have the right
must
to end
entail
your
a
life.
right not to speak at all. If you're being forced by someone to say something, if you're suffering under compelled speech, I don't think that person is respecting your right to freedom of speech. Likewise, if somebody is forcing you to stay alive, I don't think they're respecting your right to life. Of course, the big debate at the moment is over assisted dying. That is, should it be legal for somebody else to help you to die if that's what you choose to do, in a medical setting, for example. Even today, of course, the issue of assisted suicide is highly politicized, and it's impossible to find unbiased information about the issue. We can, of course, never remove bias, but we can use tools to help manage and analyze that bias, and one of those tools is the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News aggregates stories from thousands of local and international outlets in one place so you can compare the reporting. Take a look. Pope Francis recently commented on Portugal's decision to legalize euthanasia. Looking at the story on Ground News, I can compare headlines from across the political spectrum. Crux, a source labelled as centre, quotes the Pope saying, "You don't mess with life." Breitbart, however, a right-wing source, chose to frame the story as the Pope denouncing the ugly compassion of abortion and euthanasia. I can also see a biased distribution on the side of the page. Of the sources with a clear political leaning, 80% of them reporting on this story are from the right, with only one from the centre and none from left-leaning outlets. So if you read mainly left-wing news, you could miss this story entirely without the help of Ground News. It even shows me who owns the outlets and gives me a factuality rating for the source. Understanding both sides of the story is obviously essential to the work that I do, and why I think this app and website are so useful. Not only do they provide context to the information, they also make it easy to see how the media frames important issues. Check it out for yourself at Ground. Long ago, in my country, for example, that suicide itself was illegal. That is, it was a criminal offence to attempt to take your own life. In the UK, in July of 1958, a 59-year-old man was sentenced to 6 months in prison for attempting suicide and failing. According to Wikipedia, in ancient Athens, a person who had died of suicide without the approval of the state was denied the honors of a normal burial. The person would be buried alone on the outskirts of the city without a headstone or a marker. Considerably more amazing is a criminal ordinance that was issued by Louis XIV in France in 1670, which was far more severe in its punishment. The dead person's body was to be drawn through the streets, face down, and then hung or thrown on a garbage heap. Additionally, all of the person's property was confiscated. Nowadays, it seems quite unthinkable to have such legal consequences for committing suicide or attempting it, but there are still places in the world today where suicide is liable to punishment and even imprisonment. I think that the seminal essay on suicide was written by Arthur Schopenhauer, and he discusses this concept of the legality of suicide, saying the following: "Now let the reader's own moral feelings decide as to whether or not suicide is a criminal act. Think of the impression that would be made upon you by the news that someone you know had committed the crime, say, of murder or theft, or been guilty of some act of cruelty or deception, and compare it with your feelings when you hear that he has met a voluntary death. While in the one case, a lively sense of indignation and extreme resentment will be aroused, and you will call loudly for punishment or revenge. In the other, you will be moved to grief and sympathy, and mingled with your thoughts will be an admiration for his courage, rather than the moral disapproval which follows upon a wicked action. The most controversial element of that is probably the admiration for the courage of the person that Schopenhauer assumes that you would have. But putting that aside, I do think he helpfully illustrates here the intuitive difference between criminal behavior and that of suicide. This one was a fairly popular suggestion. It got 31 likes, and I think that most people, when really pressed to think about it, will say that, of course, I can think of some kind of circumstance in which suicide should be at least permissible, and so I'm not sure how controversial this take is, but there seems to be an implicit suggestion here that somebody should be able to have the right to end their life essentially for any reason. That's probably a bit more controversial, but I'm still not quite sure if I can put it in the spicy category. I'm going to have to put it probably somewhere in the middle. Life is always, yes, always worth living. Well, look, I spoke too soon. Now, importantly, this doesn't seem to be a legal claim. That is, the person doesn't seem to be suggesting that you should legally have to stay alive. It seems to be more a claim about value, that whether or not it's legal to commit suicide, it's always the wrong thing to do because life is always valuable. For me, I think this just results from a poverty of imagination. If you can't think of a situation in which you believe suicide would be genuinely preferable to you, I just don't think you're trying hard enough. Imagine being contorted into an extremely painful position inside a box with no light and just enough food to keep you alive and stuck there for the rest of your life, and you knew that there was going to be no escape. In such a situation, I think I would find it difficult to be convinced of the intrinsic value of staying alive for staying alive's sake. In common parlance, people tend to say that life is almost always worth living. That is, in the vast majority of cases, yes, life is definitely worth continuing, but to say that it is always, yes, always worth living is just putting it a bit too strongly for me. And I think that most people would probably agree with that, and that's why I'm going to give this spicy. Libertarian free will exists. Come on, Justin, you could have done better than that. Well, apparently you could have. Forgiveness can be toxic and actually impede people from improving
but that's
themselves.
not a spicy hot take.
When it comes to adding to your silver stack, it's important to work with a business you can trust. That's where JM...
I think the idea here is something like, if you're constantly forgiven for doing bad things, then you never actually get to improve your character because you can just keep getting away with this stuff. I do think that a necessary condition of genuine forgiveness is genuine apology on the part of the wrongdoer, and genuine apology requires genuine recognition of wrongdoing. It means that somebody has to really wish that they rather hadn't done the thing that they'd done. If that's the case, then I think that alone is enough to inspire progress. If somebody regrets the decisions they've made in the past, that's an incredibly motivating factor in improving your life. The problem, of course, is an epistemic one. How can we know that someone is genuinely sorry? If they say they're sorry and they're not, and we forgive them, then I think it can allow them to essentially get away with anything and not ever develop their character. But in that case, I don't think it's because we're forgiving them that they're not developing, but rather because they're not recognizing what they did was actually wrong. Having said that, for such people, not allowing them to just get away with things, not just forgiving them for doing things wrong when they're not genuinely sorry, would give them an extra reason to act differently, and so it might develop them in that way. But I'm not sure that this kind of human development at the threat of social pressure is the kind of human development that we're really valuing in a conversation like this. Still, I think it's a perfectly intelligible thing to say and perfectly reasonable, even if we might dispute it ultimately, and so I think I'm going to give it minty. Oh, this one's got 47 likes. Jesus of Nazareth is particularly the only way to eternal life.
Yes!
Given that it's got so many likes, and given that it, forms the foundation of
true.
the Christian
That's not
religion,
spicy,
I'm going to have to
though.
call it a spicy take. In fact, I think I'm going to have to give it minty. Remember, the prompt was to be unique
That's just
and
true.
controversial, and you've just described the basis of the world's most popular religious belief system. If I knew what a hot take was, I might be able to answer your question. How about some more precision in framing your question? Respect your reader. Okay, that one's pretty spicy, actually. If moral realism is false, then nothing matters. Speaking objectively, this could be almost a tautology. If there's no such thing as objective value, then nothing objectively matters. Of course, it's still going to be the case that things will matter to individuals subjectively, but in a world where there's no objectivity to these values, these are not going to be based in anything concrete. And so saying nothing
I don't
matters,
know why
I think
I
needs to be
can't
qualified with the
fucking
idea
move
that
this guy.
things will still matter to people.
Maybe it's
but I
because
think what you mean
I'm
is that they don't
building
matter
these-
objectively, which I think I would probably agree with. And whether I agree with it or not, I think it's a fairly popular
because I'm
philosophical view,
recruiting
so
these
I'm
people.
going to have to give it mild. Even if we are 100% sure of an idea idea, it can be wrong. Now, this one seems fairly straightforward.
Yeah,
Of
that's
course, you
true.
can be 100% certain about something and it be wrong. I can conceive of a person for some psychological reason being 100% certain that the Earth is flat, and they're wrong. So, yeah, of course this is true. However, there are some philosophical implications of this. For example, the most famous attempt to ground philosophy in basic, undeniable statements was made by Descartes in his Meditations on First Philosophy. Famously, when trying to discover those items of knowledge which we simply cannot doubt, he landed upon "Je pense donc je suis. Cogito ergo
I think,
sum."
therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am. And for many, the idea is that this can be some kind of foundation of knowledge, or at least
Right.
one thing that we can know, because
And he's saying that since you think, that means that you are. So even if you're thinking that you're not thinking, you're still thinking. So you, even if you're thinking that you don't exist, that you aren't that you don't exist, or that you can't think, that means that you're thinking about it. So
there's simply no way to doubt it. As long as you are thinking, you know that there must be a you to do the thinking. Now, I have a whole video on this phrase, what it actually means, and indeed what it actually proves, if anything. But the most pertinent thing here is that I don't think Descartes actually proves that you can know that you exist. What Descartes shows is that you can't doubt that you exist. This isn't quite the same thing. I think that what Descartes achieves in the Meditations is showing quite compellingly that you can be certain that you exist. It's simply not something that you can doubt. But does certainty confer truth? I certainly don't think it does, at least not necessarily. And so if it is the case that you can be
I think that
100%
these
certain
guys
about
attacked
something
my
and yet be
fucking
wrong about it,
place.
then
What
I think
cunts.
therefore I am is something that, yeah, you can be certain about, but that doesn't mean that you can actually know that you exist. It could still be false. So given the implication of this take, I mean, it essentially undermines this popular interpretation of Descartes that he managed to establish that you can know that it's true that you exist. I think I have to rate this kind of spicy. Time doesn't exist. It's not even a
Ooh.
philosophical take. That one's definitely Indian spicy. Not the view that time doesn't exist, the view that saying time doesn't exist is somehow not a philosophical take. That itself is an incredibly spicy philosophical take. Dialogues are overhyped. It's a more digestible way to learn, but it can be biased when only one person writes it. Dialogues are one of the most popular ways to convey philosophical ideas. Plato used them, Hume used them, Galileo used them, amongst many others, of course. And I understand the fear here that given one person is writing both sides of the debate, there's going to be some bias involved, but I think that's kind of the point. In many dialogues, the idea is not just to discuss philosophical ideas back and forth, but to argue for a point, and they're just doing this through the means of dialogue. For example, one of the reasons why the Catholic Church was so angry with Galileo is that he published a text called A Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. Ostensibly, this text was just a dialogue between different characters discussing their different worldviews, but to anybody reading, it's quite clear which view is the one that Galileo himself held. Those arguments are just a little bit stronger and a little bit more forceful than the other ones in the text. And so this dialogue was seen as part of the reason why Galileo could be accused of heresy, even though it was indeed a dialogue. A modern example of this is the kind of thing that you might see on TikTok. Here's an example from my friend Justin Brierley, who's making an argument for the existence of God, but doing it in the form of a dialogue.
Hey, Christian, why do you believe in all that weird supernatural stuff? I've got my reasons. Why do you believe what you believe? I'm an atheist. I don't have any beliefs to defend. Really? Well, what about the universe? Where do you believe that came from? I don't know. From nowhere, I guess.
Now, would I say that dialogue is an overrated way of doing philosophy because Justin is clearly biased here? Well, no, because that's kind of the point. He's not trying to do some objective presentation of different worldviews without presenting an opinion of his own. He's using the dialogue as a means to argue for his own case. That's what dialogues are often for. So I think that to say they're overhyped because of the bias of the author is mistaken. And given that this also isn't a particularly controversial thing to say, I'm going to have to give it a minty rating. The reason why two twin brothers or two twin sisters can't have consensual sex is because it's icky.
Olive Garden's Never-Ending Pasta Bowl is back, starting at $13.99.
I can turn
it's
anything into
wrong.
pillow. Those words, bam! Now pillow. Dog, cat, steak, gold, football man, movie stars, sports team. Your beloved dog? You love him so much? Now he's pillow. Your beloved Mima that you haven't seen since you were 12. Yababushki! Pillow. I miss you, Mima.
Now this is interesting because I have seen secular ethicists struggle greatly to condemn incestuous sexual behavior. And I think the reason for this is that if you're, say, a utilitarian and you just think that minimization of suffering is the only metric by which we judge whether things are moral, then in a situation where two people have consensual sex and don't cause any suffering, what could possibly be the problem? And yet there's something so intuitively wrong about incest that people will trip over themselves to try to find a way to condemn it nonetheless. My own ethical worldview is unsettled, but I find myself mostly in alignment with ethical emotivism. It's a view that somewhat went out of favor in the 20th century, but I think it still makes sense. Ethical emotivism is the view that moral statements or moral propositions, when spoken, are just expressions of emotion. Famously, A.J. Ayer described this as saying that murder is wrong is just the same as going, boo murder. Similarly, saying that courage is good is just the same as expressing yay courage. These expressions don't have truth value. Saying that murder is wrong is not the same thing as saying I don't like murder. That's something that can be true or false. It can be true that I don't like murder. Saying murder is wrong is just expressing boo murder. And that's not something that can be true or false. It's immune to truth value. And so ethical emotivists think that when we say something is wrong, we're doing something analogous to just thinking of it as icky and expressing that ickiness. And so on ethical emotivism, it's fairly easy to still make sense of the claim incest is wrong, because that is just an expression of an emotional state. So my ethical worldview is one that I think easily allows a person to say, yeah, incest is wrong. But for a lot of secular ethicists, if they're not emotivists and they believe that ethics has truth value grounded in something like suffering, it's a famously difficult thing to do. But yeah, I think anything involving this kind of material is going to naturally end up in the spicy category. Democracy seems to be the breeding ground for populism. I think I'm going to give this a mild rating, not because I don't think it's true, but because I think it's something that's quite widely recognized even amongst proponents of democracy. Winston Churchill is often attributed as having said, democracy is the worst form of government, except all the other ones that we've tried. And this embodies the spirit that even those who are in favor of democracy don't think that it's some kind of fix-all solution that's going to give us a perfect political society and government, but rather that it's just the best option we have. Given that we know that there can't really be such a thing as a perfect political system, those who are in favor of democracy will have to recognize that it's going to have some problems, it's going to have some costs. And the most famous cost of all with democracy is the idea that sometimes people make the wrong choices, or sometimes people elect people that we don't like. Yeah, this is true, but I think most people recognize this and say, what's the alternative? I think it's something that's fairly widely recognized even amongst its proponents. For that reason, I'm going to give this a mild rating. Anyway, I think that will do it for now. If you like this video, let me know. We can do more. Follow me on social media for the next time that I ask for your philosophical hot takes. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Our intellectual class is wildly corrupt and also wildly anti-West. This includes apparently many of the intellectuals over at Oxford University. The Hamas fight against the free world, that is backed by a group of people who abide by a particular philosophy. That philosophy in the West is the post-colonial philosophy. 1700 sociologists yesterday. First of all, sociology is a nonsense. It's a nonsense field of study. Sociology is a made-up field of study almost entirely. There are some good sociology books that have been written, but as a field of study, it is a mishmash of absolute garbage, stupidity, and some interesting insights. That's what sociology is. But 1,700 sociologists, including signatures from professors at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, Brown, Berkeley, signed a letter in solidarity with Gaza and the Palestinian people. And here's what they write. And again, this says the whole thing. Quote, sociology as a discipline is rooted in recognition of relationships of power and inequality. As sociologists and human beings, we unreservedly condemn the latest violence against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank at the hands of the Israeli regime. The entire thing does not mention at any point what Hamas did. At any point in the entire letter. It is several paragraphs long. It is 2 pages long. No mention whatsoever of Hamas initiating this by murdering 1,500 civilians. At all. Instead, what is the justification for their siding with the Palestinians and with Hamas? By the way, for all this talk about how the Palestinian people, they don't support Hamas, the people all over the world, they don't support Hamas. I just have a question. Where are the protests against Hamas in the Arab world? Where? Have you seen them? Anywhere? At all? Bueller? No, I didn't think so. In any case, here's what the sociologists say. Quote, we join people around the world who are raising their voices in protest of this assault on human life. As educators, it is our duty to stand by the principles of critical inquiry and learning, to hold the university as a space for conversation that foregrounds historical truths and that contextualizes this past week's violence in the context of 75 years of settler colonial occupation in the European Empire. Okay, I mean, they're just saying the quiet part out loud right there. 75 years, you may notice, does not date you back to 1967. It dates you back to 1948, the establishment of the State of Israel. They're saying Israel must be destroyed. Israel must be destroyed because it is, in their words, a colonial outpost. Israel must be destroyed because the West cannot be allowed to exist in any form, even in indigenous form, in the Middle East. It cannot be allowed, according to these people. That would be an act of colonialism, of settler colonialism. And that means that any Jew who's living in the region, in the inside of Franz Fanon, ought to be victimized by violence. Revolutionary violence is part and parcel of decolonization. These are people who not only live in the West and have benefited from the West, these are people who sit at the highest institutions of learning in the West. They are calling the war that Israel is now waging on Hamas a genocidal war, which is weird because, again, generally when you commit genocide, you don't warn the civilians first, you just kill them. You know what's genocidal? Rushing into Kibbutz Be'eri and murdering everyone. You know what's not genocidal? Warning people for a week on end to get out of an area because you're attempting to hit a military target. That's not the same thing. Our friends over at Genucell have launched a new product called Genucell 3, which works fast on your under-eye bags and puffiness. Genucell 3 is smoother, more luxurious, and it uses advanced technology to deliver complex vitamins and minerals directly to your face for instant hydration. It's like Gatorade. If you don't file, you're going to start to palp.
Their geopolitical view, like everyone else's view on them, they would definitely just go and attack.
Penalties on your tax debt. That's why you need to check out Tax Network USA. The team at Tax Network USA has a track record of success. They've reduced tax debts for numerous clients totaling over $1 billion. Whether you're looking at a $10,000 or $1 million tax debt, they can help you with a settlement, which would be good. You don't want to let that tax debt overrun your life. It doesn't matter if you haven't filed in 1 year, 5 years, even a whole decade. The tradition of the civil rights movement, anti-war and anti-apartheid protests of decades past, aligning ourselves with these freedom struggles, we call on all of our colleagues to stand in solidarity with Palestinians and against settler colonialism, imperialism, and genocide.
Now, this letter is so revealing because this is really what it's all
Didn't
about.
even hear what the
The
fuck
same
he's
people who
saying.
believe that Israel is a colonial settler imposition believe that the West is entirely colonial settler imposition, that the West ought to be dismantled, that the West is an imperialist structure because it's supported by things like capitalism and free markets and free movement of labor and free speech. Those things are bad. They are settler colonial movements that must be destroyed from without or from within. That is what this is all about, which presumably is why these higher educators are, for example, at Oxford, now going to debate a motion on Thursday calling for, quote, intifada until victory. A motion shared with Oxford members of the University and College Union reportedly states that the branch believes that, quote, only a mass uprising on both sides of the Green Line and across the Middle East can free the Palestinian people. Both sides of the Green Line would mean violence inside Israel. Right? The Green Line, for folks who are not versed in Middle Eastern politics, that would be the territory held by Israel before the 1967 Six-Day War initiated by the Arabs. They're saying that they want violence across the Middle East in order to, quote unquote, free the Palestinian people, which would amount to what? Destroying Israel, obviously. This apparently says, quote, that the war is a direct consequence of decades of violent oppression of the Palestinian people by the Israeli state. Again, it's all the Jews' fault. And it goes on to say it is the duty of the international movement of workers and youth to support this struggle, and they call for a socialist federation of the Middle East and intifada until victory. That's what this whole thing is about. That is what this whole thing, and they're just saying it out loud. So you wonder why Queers for Palestine, which makes no sense. And I know there are a lot of people on the right who are puzzled by this. Why are there a bunch of people with trans flags marching alongside people who would behead them at the first available opportunity? Why?
Oh, shit.
And the answer is because it's not about that. It's about Western civilization is bad and must be torn down. And Israel is just the tip of the spear because it happens to be a Western power that exists in a place that has a very different mindset. And so it has to be dismantled. That's the thing that matters more than anything else. That's what this is really all about. Okay, meanwhile, in terms of the latest news, 2 more hostages were released overnight. Hamas set free 2 really, really elderly hostages, and they testified to the fact that Hamas has hundreds of kilometers of tunnels underground. Right now, what Hamas is attempting to do is separate off certain hostages from other hostages. They've been focusing in on the ones they think will be most sympathetic to the world media. So that means people who have connections to American media or dual citizens. They are going to hold, presumably, the male hostages that they have taken until they shoot them or kill them. That is their goal. And they're going to try to get the West.
Johnson, why are you naked? Because my t-shirt sucks. Look at Gibson. He's wearing a true classic tee. It fits him tight in all the right places.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Garg. As you know, the U.S.-Egypt relationship has been damaged over the past week in the aftermath of the war that Hamas launched against Israel. A summit with President Biden, Egyptian President Sisi, and other Arab leaders was just canceled. On Tuesday night, a rocket fired by Palestinian terrorists fell short of Israel and landed instead in the parking lot of a hospital in Gaza. Palestinian officials in Gaza, which means Hamas, immediately announced that it was an Israeli airstrike and that 500 people had been killed.
Gotta get that thing.
Their
because that
propaganda
thing's
was
just
then
gonna be
parroted
taking me out.
and amplified by American corporate media. Reuters, the New York Times, MSNBC, and CNN. Anti-American riots broke out across the Middle East. Mobs marched on American embassies. The corporate media's rabid anti-Israel reporting that was false endangered the lives of Americans across the region, including our diplomats. That libel continues to reverberate in Egypt. The Egyptian government and public continues to peddle the lie, and they blame America. How do you intend to navigate in this environment in Egypt? What can be done specifically?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I believe strongly that having a confirmed ambassador in place helps elevate our engagement and our ability to advance our U.S. interests. In this case, it's also building the relationships and the trust, which is extremely important for us
thing is
to
fucking
do.
crazy looking.
And being active in terms of telling our side of the story and the truth, which I think is also very important to do.
Do you believe that this sort of anti-Israel media
That's a crazy-ass
disinformation
cannon, bro.
undermines American national security interests?
I can say, Mr. Senator, an issue that has come up several times today, which I think is vitally important, is disinformation in general and how we as a U.S. government need to think more strongly about how we deal with disinformation across the globe and in particular in the Middle East.
Well, unfortunately, many in the media allow their hatred of Israel to color their coverage, and indeed, in this instance, to cause them to peddle outright falsehoods. But the media is not alone. I want to ask you about another source of anti-American and anti-Israel incitement in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood has in the past seized control of the Egyptian government, and they remain influential and dangerous. The Egyptian government has imprisoned prominent Muslim Brotherhood figures. I want to ask you about one in particular, Salah Sultan. As you know, Sultan is a Muslim Brotherhood leader and a hate preacher. He has called for the eradication of Jews. He has called for, and this is a quote, obliterating America. He has called it divine law. Now, when you and I met in my office, we discussed this case. The Biden administration, bizarrely, has been pressuring Egypt to release Sultan and has even brought up his case to withhold assistance to Egypt. Some of my colleagues here in the Senate and on this committee agree with that pressure. I'd ask for your judgment. I understand there are genuine concerns about Egypt's imprisonment and treatment of political prisoners. However, Sultan is not an American citizen and is, in fact, an anti-American radical who preaches the murder of Americans and the murder of Jews. How on earth does it make sense that the Biden administration is trying to free a rabid anti-Semite who hates America and preaches violence against both Israel and America?
Thank you, Mr. Senator, for that question. And thank you. From our last meeting, you highlighted a few of the actual sites, which I did watch in Arabic to make sure that nothing was lost in translation. And I condemn in the strongest sense, and I think everyone on this committee condemns the comments that I did hear Mr. Sultan make on public TV in Egypt. That said, the United States government, this administration, is pushing for rights across the board for those in prison to have medical access. He's 80 years old. He's been in prison for a long time.
With respect, it's not medical access. There are members of this committee that are trying to write into law that America should free this man. And my time has expired, but I just want to read 2 quotes from him to understand who it is the Biden administration is trying to free. Here's one quote. "We will fight Israel and all those who are behind it. Allah is present in this equation, and he is capable of obliterating America and any other oppressor. This is a divine law." That's one quote. Here's another quote. "As someone who has studied Islamic law, specializing in Islamic jurisprudence, I am calling to kill the Israeli ambassador, not just expel him. Any Zionist, tourist or other, who enters Egypt must be killed." I ask my Democrat colleagues, is this someone that we should be fighting to release from jail to be able to follow through on exactly what he's pledged he wants to do, which is murder Jews and murder Americans?
Senator Cardin.
Our brothers and sisters in Israel are under attack. So many precious lives have been taken. Families are bereft. So many are suffering the horrors of captivity. The depth of the evil perpetrated is unthinkable. Let us be clear. The barbaric attacks launched by the murderous Hamas terrorists were not about the borders of Israel, not about attaining political or military objectives. Our enemies target the very existence of the Jewish people.
Fuck!
And as anti-Semitism surges in capitals across the world, we are all on the front lines.
Bro, this is
fucked. This war is about who we are and what we stand for. An ongoing attempt to uproot our eternal values and history, our divine mission. As the brave soldiers of the IDF wage a just and heroic military battle to ensure Jewish survival, let us all join hands to issue a clear statement of intent that we will not succumb, we will not submit, and we will not forsake our eternal values. It's no coincidence that Hamas attacked on Shabbat. Shabbat is who we are. It is the very soul of the Jewish people. It is the God-given gift that has within it everything we need at this time of historic challenge and forever. Resolve and inner peace, faith and purpose, family and community, and the meaning of being a Jew. And so, let the word go forth that on this year's Shabbat project, every Jew in every corner of the globe will be keeping Shabbat from sunset on.
Well, Barack Obama was a wildly anti-Israel president. Everybody knew it. Well, now he has emerged from his hidey hole to unleash a massive essay on why, in the end, it's probably the Jews' fault what's going on right now. It's not just Joe Biden who's telling this big lie, number one, which is that Israel, if it weren't for America, Israel would just be gloves off murdering people. Barack Obama, of course, does this as well. Now, Barack Obama, I said many, many years ago, is effectively anti-Semitic in his approach to Israel. This has been true since he became president. Barack Obama is the only president in American history who tried to deny aid to Israel in the middle. He literally tried to stop the resupply of Iron Dome in the middle of a war in 2014. Barack Obama stocked his administration with people who despise Israel. Most anti-Israel president in my lifetime, bar none, not close. And so it's no shot. Which again,
I mean, who gives a shit if he's anti-Israel?
anti-colonialist worldview, which is really a left-wing worldview left over from the
Obama
1960s, the basic idea being that the West and its tentacles are everywhere and must be fought everywhere. There was a shift in how Israel was perceived on the far left. From 1948 to 67, Israel was considered actually an anti-colonial state because it had thrown off the British and had allowed the indigenous people of Judea, namely the Jews, to return to their homeland. And then after the Jews won in 67, the Soviet Union decided that Israel was too pro-Western, and so they ginned up this whole new post-colonialist nonsense where Israel is actually a Western colonial occupier, which is an amazing switch in time to save time. But Barack Obama really believes that. That's how he talks about the state of Israel on a routine basis. In fact, in a speech that he made while he was president, talking about the roots of the state of Israel, he didn't attribute it to Israel's historic presence. He didn't attribute it to, Jewish history or Jewish presence. He attributed it all to the Holocaust, meaning Israel was a colonial state, right? That's Barack Obama's mindset. So he has said virtually nothing about this entire conflict. And now he puts out a statement. Thoughts on Israel and Gaza. Because we needed to hear from him. He was so successful in this arena, was Barack Obama. We need to hear from him. So he throat clears for a couple of paragraphs about how Hamas is bad. Right? It's been 17 days since Hamas launched its horrific attack against Israel, killing over 1,400 Israeli citizens, including defenseless women, children, and the elderly. As I stated in an earlier post, Israel has a right to defend itself. But,
what the fuck?
Right, and there's the big but, as we say. But, even as we support Israel, we should also be clear that how Israel prosecutes this fight against Hamas matters. In particular, it matters, as Joe Biden has repeatedly emphasized, that Israel's military strategy abides by international law, including those laws that seek to avoid to every extent possible the death or suffering of civilian populations. Upholding those values is important for its own sake, because it is morally just and reflects our belief in the inherent value of everyday life. By the way, if you cared about any of this, the first priority is the destruction of Hamas. They're the biggest human rights violators on the planet right now. And yet, I don't see Barack Obama talking about that sort of stuff. By the way, he says that he supports Biden's call for the United States to support Israel in going after Hamas, dismantling its military capabilities, and facilitating the safe return of hundreds of hostages to their family. But, by the way, that is not opposing Hamas. You'll notice. Dismantling Hamas's military capacity, but leaving them in place would be just fine, apparently, with Barack Obama. And again, Israel has to be leveraged. We have to, Barack Obama's going to stand there, he's going to tell them, all those Jews, if I don't tell them, if they need to stop, and they're just going to go in there, and they're going to be brutal, they're going to be horrible. And then he says, this is an enormously difficult task. War is always tragic. Even the most carefully planned military operations often put civilians at risk. As President Biden noted during his recent visit to Israel, America itself has at times fallen short of our higher values when engaged in war, and in the aftermath of 9/11, the U.S. government wasn't interested in heeding the advice of even our allies when it came to steps we took to protect ourselves against al-Qaeda. Now, after the systematic massacre of Israeli citizens, a massacre that evokes some of the darkest memories of persecution against Jewish people, it's understandable. Many Israelis have demanded their government do whatever it takes to root out Hamas and make sure the attacks never happen again. Still, again, two big buts in one piece. Still, the world is watching closely as events in the region unfold. Any military strategy that ignores the human cost could ultimately backfire. Here, and again, there it is, right? There it is. If Israel defends itself, they're just going to be planting the seeds for more anti-Semitic attacks, which means it's really Israel's fault. It's really Israel's fault in the end. If Israel goes in too hard and they take out Hamas, but Hamas has put too many civilians in front of its rockets, well, all that's going to do is it's going to create more terror against Israel. And then really, who's to blame? The Jews, says Barack Obama. Because, again, the Israeli government's decision to cut off food, water, and electricity to a captive civilian population threatens not only to worsen a growing humanitarian crisis, it could further harden Palestinian attitudes for generations. Oh, the vaunted Palestinian attitudes, because as we know, they are extremely pliable right now and have been for 30 years. So much pliability, so much attempt for peace, so many peace-seeking people who don't exist. That's obviously, that's the big priority. The priority after the murder of 1,500 Jews in Israel and the kidnapping of 200 is the pliability of the Palestinian population. By the way, Israel, I gotta say, the Gaza hospitals, where the power is still largely on, it's like Hanukkah over there. It was 1 day of oil that was supposed to last for 1 day, lasted for 8. We're now like 18 days into the war, and still, magically, there's still some electricity in northern Gaza. By the way, there's still water in many. Why? Because Israel provided 5 to 10% of all the water in the first place. By the way, there's still full power and water in the south of Gaza. The entire purpose of cutting off the water and power in the north is to send people to the south, so you can do military operations in the north. But Barack Obama knows that. Instead, he's just promoting this lie. And it goes on and on and on and on. Pure Talk recently announced they would alleviate $10 million in veterans' debt by Veterans Day. Thanks to your support, they're 53% to that goal with 2 weeks to go. Think about this. The U.S. military is made up of 100% volunteers. These are men and women who willingly sacrifice everything they have for this country. When they're done serving, they return home to a tight job market and outrageous living expenses. This is why I'm happy a private company like Pure Talk has jumped in to help. When you switch to Pure Talk's lightning-fast 5G network, they'll donate a portion of every new order to this noble cause. You can make a real difference just by choosing superior cell phone service. To get better service at a lower cost, and you happen to be helping veterans at the same time. Pure Talk's plans start at just $20 a month, offering unlimited talk, text, more data, and a mobile hotspot. Just head on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Make that switch today. Let's rally together, show unwavering support for our veterans. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro. Switch to Pure Talk today. It's the right move. It's the American way. Again, visit puretalk.com/Shapiro today. I take all my calls via Pure Talk. They have an excellent cell phone network. The tower network is great. The coverage is great. Costs me less money. Go check it out right now. puretalk.com/Shapiro. The Ben Shapiro Show is supported by Grand Canyon University, an affordable private Christian university with a vibrant campus in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. According to Niche.com, Grand Canyon University is ranked in the top 20 in the country. GCU is a missional, Christ-centered university that strives to foster a culture of community, giving, and impact. GCU's goal is to help you develop into a servant leader who makes a difference through finding your purpose. GCU integrates the free market system with a welcoming Christian worldview into your bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree. They have over 330 academic programs, 270 of which are available online. At GCU, you'll have support from your own university counselor who takes a personalized approach to helping you achieve your goals. So find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu today. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu today. Barack Obama, long essay lecturing the Jews, of course. He says, finally, in dealing with what is an extraordinarily complex situation, and there's the complexity. There's so much nuance, so much because standing in the moral middle allows you to stand with the bad guys while pretending that you're not. He says, in dealing with what's an extraordinarily complex situation where so many are in pain and passions are understandably running high, all of us need to do our best to put our best values rather than our worst fears on displays. That means actively opposing anti-Semitism in all of its forms everywhere. It means rejecting efforts to minimize the terrible tragedy the Israeli people have just endured. Notice the Israeli people, not the Jewish people, the Israeli people, as well as the morally bankrupt suggestion that any cause can somehow justify the deliberate slaughter of innocent people. It means rejecting anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, or anti-Palestinian sentiment. It means refusing to lump all Palestinians with Hamas or other terrorist groups. It means guarding against dehumanizing language toward the people of Gaza. Okay, how about this? How about none of this has been dehumanizing? Civilians in Gaza are still civilians, and it's Hamas's fault they're in the way. Quote, it means acknowledging the Palestinians have also lived in disputed territories for generations, that many of them were not only displaced when Israel was formed, but continue to be forcibly displaced by a settler movement that too often has received tacit or explicit support from the Israeli. There it is. It's the two states, all the settlers, all the usual reasons why Palestinian desire for Israeli extermination is totally fine. It's because somebody built a bathroom in a fraud. That's really the problem. That Palestinian leaders who've been willing to make concessions for a two-state solution have too often had too little to show for their efforts. Who are these Palestinian leaders who've been super willing to make concessions for a two-state solution? Who are they? Name them. Seriously, name them. I'd like to hear. Full list. Go. Oh, you don't have any? Oh, there's a shock. And that it is possible for people of goodwill to champion Palestinian rights and oppose certain Israeli government policies in the West Bank and Gaza without being anti-Semitic. Nobody even made the accusation that you have to agree with everything Israel does. But you do have to look at reality in the face. Reality in the face. The Palestinian Authority seeks the destruction of Israel. They're not shy about this.
Let's watch this. I don't think that everyone says that YouTube should like delete her channel, but I don't think that they should because she didn't do anything on YouTube, but she should definitely be deleted on Instagram.
And you know what else is a great deal? Today's sponsor, Factor. Factor sends healthy, chef-prepared, ready-made meal kits right to your home. And you don't even have to be a likable person for them to do it, too. Like, even if you suck, they'll still send you the food. That's pretty crazy and really lucky for me. You can cook them in the microwave, but I like cooking them in the oven because it's big. Avoid the hassle of extensive, stressful food prepping by taking the guesswork out of all of your meals. Even if you're one of those...
There we go.
That thing. Thanks to Factor again for sponsoring. Today is gonna be a doozy. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on YouTube for a very long time now. So long, in fact, that I can vividly remember a time where YouTubers had animated intros of them chloroforming cartoon women, and nobody in the editing room went, "You sure?"
Thanks for dropping in. I'm Cyan Hart, the cool.
Hey, bud. What are you trying to say here? What's going on here with this? So when I tell you that today's story is probably the most out-of-pocket shit I've ever seen on the platform, I really need you to understand the weight behind that. I'm not joshing with you. I'm sure you've probably already heard some of this.
No, it's not the most out-of-pocket.
Sniper Wolf is a hugely successful creator here on YouTube with 34 million subscribers.
Not the most.
Who used to do
There's
epic gameplay
There's
videos
people
back
who
in the
literally
day before
were trying to
transitioning into what she
fuck
does
children.
now, stealing everybody's content, not crediting it, and lazily reacting to it.
She played the entire TikTok without a video of her even on it. She was not there.
I'm not a fan of reaction content, obviously, but even if I was, I would still feel like this is pretty fucking egregious. This behavior obviously drew a lot of criticism from the community, including from friend of the show, Jax Films, who took it upon himself to make a Sniper Wolf parody account to satirize
what she
and draw
did
attention
is
to
definitely
content
wrong.
and help those whose content Sniper Wolf had appropriated to get compensated
You
for
don't
their
dox
stolen work,
people
which,
and
by
just
the way,
show
he's
the
been
fucking front of
successfully
their
doing,
house.
So good on him. And that's basically the long and short of it, up to a certain point. So let's do a thought experiment for just a moment. Let's put you, the viewer, in the shoes of Sniper Wolf for just a minute. You are stealing content from dozens, if not hundreds of creators and making a pretty penny off it on a daily basis. You then notice that another YouTube creator with a fraction of your audience is kind of joking about it a little bit. He's made a parody account based on you and is criticizing you by mimicking your upload style, your thumbnails, etc. Now there's a number of responses that you, as Sniper Wolf, could have. Do you A, ignore it because you're intensely rich and will continue to be, so who fucking cares? Do you B, message him to hopefully resolve the issue between you two? Do you C, accept the criticism and improve your behavior? Or do you D, dox him by showing up to his house unannounced at sundown and sharing a picture of his house with your millions of followers on
obviously
Instagram,
wrong.
a sizable enough percentage of which might be unhinged enough to act irresponsibly with that information?
But
This is a
also
hard
him
one,
acting like a
so
giant
take your
pussy is kind
time.
of stupid.
What's really wild about this, truthfully, is that this has been an unwritten code of YouTube ethics for a long, long time now. No matter how out of pocket certain periods of YouTube got, people eating hair cakes, making mean-spirited jokes, even if you were stealing other people's content.
Hair cake is a good
You
video.
just didn't share people's home addresses or the home addresses of their families with millions of strangers as a retaliatory tactic.
Fuck,
Even
bro.
the most controversial, misbehaved figures from back in the day didn't stoop that low. It really is like revenge porn level of out of pocket. Geez, Chris, does it get worse somehow? Yes. Yes, it do. Now, something we have to really understand about the situation before we delve any deeper is that Sniper Wolf is very big on YouTube, and she's very big to YouTube as well. She's even been directly shouted out by YouTube on a few separate occasions mega recently. So when she literally doxes a person and YouTube does nothing about it, it comes across as them ignoring it, which they absolutely are. It's especially insane when you consider how they've treated other content creators in similar situations. I don't remember how long ago this was, but it feels like 10 years ago. So I'm going to say 10 years ago when Quantum TV straight up doxed the Actman and his family. YouTube didn't do anything either, but ended up demonetizing Actman's entire channel over a tweet about him joking about doxing.
The tweets I made were satirical. They were clearly satirical, meant to be a joke about a situation. Like, there's no debate. I made it painfully obvious for you and everyone so that something like this wouldn't happen.
So joking about doxing is enough to get your channel demonetized for a while. It took a shockingly long time for them to reverse course on that decision. So joking about doxing gets you mega punished. But actually doxing begets no punishment at all. That seems a bit ridiculous. Now, in regards to the Sniper Wolf situation, YouTube was completely silent on this for an entire full week. Like, a full week went by before they came out with this statement, which has to be one of the most "you had me in the first half" statements I've ever seen. Confirming Sniper Wolf has received a temporary monetization suspension per creator responsibility policies. Temporary. A nice little slap on the wrist. Oh no, you're not gonna make money today. Maybe tomorrow, sure, but today's really what matters. At least it's something, though. Temporary is better than no punishment at all, so, whatever, fine. Let's see what else they have to say. Off-platform actions that put others' personal safety at risk or harm our community, and the behavior on both sides is not what we want on YouTube. They actually tried to both sides this shit. Yeah, we understand that she stalked you and shared your personal home with millions of strangers on Instagram, but in fairness, Mr. Films, weren't you also being a bit of a tattletale? What's funny about this really is that their actions betray their feelings on the matter too, because if YouTube truly believed that they were both in the wrong, then why is Sniper Wolf the one getting the temporary monetization ban while Jack is fine? They know what she did was fucked up, but they've endorsed her before, and they've endorsed her super recently, and I think they just don't want to deal with that. Look, ultimately, this situation is just really fucked up. Granted, I also know Jack. We've hung out, and we've literally just had him on the podcast just a day or two before this whole thing went down. But even though I know Jack and his hilarious wife, Erin, personally, I don't think it's my bias talking when I say that, doxing is one of the lowest things you can do as a public figure, and if there's anything on the platform that warrants a deplatform, doxing is at least in the top 3 things. People have downright scary and concerning parasocial relationships with public figures these days, especially YouTubers, especially content creators. Even if we're being generous and saying that only 0.1% of Sniper Wolf's 5 million Instagram followers were unhinged enough to act irresponsibly with that information that she gave to her followers, that's still 50,000 strangers who know where you live and have a strange personal parasocial vendetta against you. At the very least, that's really unsettling. But don't worry, Jack, because Sniper Wolf has publicly apologized, and that makes everything better. Let me start by saying, I'm sorry.
Finally, fuck.
It's inexcusable. Took her a week, by the way, to address this. Instead of understanding immediately that that's something that you just don't do, it took her a week to really marinate on this, to be like, maybe I shouldn't have done this insane fucking thing. I'm sorry to Jack's Film. I see she hired the famous writer of the Lord of Ring Gollum apology post. So that's cool. I'm sorry to Jack's Film, YouTube, the entire creator community, and my incredible fans for not being a better example for appropriate conflict resolution. I'd also like to thank YouTube for holding me accountable. I deserve it. Respect the decision and appreciate the opportunity to learn and grow from a true lapse in judgment. A severe and continuous lapse in judgment, I'm sure. Also, by the way, that temporary demonetization on Sniper Wolf's channel, that whole, I deserve to be held accountable, rendered completely moot because she's just re-uploading those demonetized videos to a secondary monetized channel to circumvent the punishment. So you love to see it. Look, I really just wanted to sit and talk about this for a little bit because despite my edgy sense of humor and my irreverent demeanor, I really do think creator safety is incredibly important. We live in this weird middle ground as YouTubers or content creators where we're technically famous and well known, but we're also not separated from society like rich celebrities are. You know what I mean? It's okay for you to know where Brad Pitt lives because Brad Pitt lives in a massive house with a full security detail probably, surrounded by other equally famous people in a gated community, relatively safe from random stalkers and psychos in the midst of their audience. But YouTubers are different, you know, like you'll recognize us on the street, but you know, we'll walk into the building across the street from you because that's where we live. And like I said before, dude, the idea of 50,000 strangers knowing exactly where I live and like having a personal gripe with me despite not knowing me personally at all, that's really, I don't know, man, that's uncomfortable, man. Everybody deserves the basic peace of mind of being able to go home and feel safe. And that feeling extends to people that I would personally consider morally dubious. And I also don't like this idea that this 30-year-old woman who's been a content creator for a very long time just somehow didn't know that doxing was too much. I knew that was something that you absolutely didn't do in my early 20s when I had a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of Sniper Wolf's audience. So I'm not buying this whole like, oh, it was a lapse in my judgment. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. How insane do you have to be for that to be a lapse in judgment in the first place? Look, it's time we stopped handling these creators with kids' gloves because this is just a really irresponsible use of an audience. And I personally think, you know, Sniper Wolf can go away. Anyway, that's really it. I know this is a little bit short, but I kind of wanted to just talk about this because it's just, I don't know. I feel like maybe some of you might disagree with me. Maybe some of you are on the staunch, like, hey, no deplatforming for no reason. Maybe some of you feel more similar to me where it's like, yeah, there's a pretty long leash for deplatforming, but this might just be a little bit too far, personally, maybe. So I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments, so be sure to go down there. I'm going to be reading them. And that'll be it. I'll see you soon with a video about a video game. I love you. Be careful, be good, and behave. Take care. Clap sync, 1, 2, 3.
I started out as a kindergarten teacher.
I am a spiritual wellness practitioner.
I teach people how to paint in acrylics.
I've earned $560,000 in 30 months using.
So one of the world's largest reaction YouTubers, Sniper Wolf, has seemingly doxed another YouTuber, Jax Films, and they weren't exactly on the greatest of terms to begin with.
We know where you live and we came to torment you.
Now, one of the unwritten rules of online flame wars is that what's said on the internet stays on the internet. But if an online adversary were to, say, move your dispute from the internet to the real world by making an unannounced visit to your home address late at night, then posted a picture of said home to millions of their followers while demanding that you two should talk, well, that's the kind of thing that might alarm a reasonable person. And perhaps a person whose home was shared with millions of people might wonder aloud if crimes have been committed in the process. And that person might reach out to say, I don't know, your favorite legal YouTuber, and that legal YouTuber might then go down the entire rabbit hole to figure out if any crimes have been committed here. And no, this is not a law school hypothetical as much as it is a description of the rapidly escalating feud between two online adversaries, Jax Films and Sniper Wolf. Now, Jax Films, a YouTuber and sketch comedian, has long been critical of fellow YouTuber and live streamer Sniper Wolf, that's Sniper with 3 capital S's, for what he describes as her stealing from other creators by reposting content without permission and creating non-transformative reaction content.
A few weeks ago, I made a video about YouTuber Sniper Wolf and how she's profited off the works of thousands of other creators by reacting to them in the laziest way possible. In fact, she's gotten so predictable that Twitter user Piosaurus3 made us a bingo card out of Sniper Wolfisms, and we just kind of ran with it.
No!
Shaky cam? Oh, your boy's got shaky cam.
What's wrong with you?
Stop yelling. It's kind of unnecessary.
Got their car, their neighbor's car.
Oh, all right. Summarizing, sound effect.
That's a take on the electric Porsche.
Yes! Mr. Beast captions!
Huh, I just got this crazy feeling of deja vu. And Sniper Wolf, with over 34 million followers on YouTube and nearly 350,000 on Twitch, denies stealing content, writing on Twitter, quote, 90% of what I upload are my ideas, people copy me, and then people like you get confused. Now, as much as I would like to weigh in on whether she is stealing content or not, that is not why we are here today. No, after a year of sparring online, Sniper Wolf showed up to the Los Angeles home of Jax Films and his wife and proceeded to share a photo of their residence to millions of her Instagram followers. Though she quickly deleted that post, Jax Films accused his online nemesis of doxing, stalking, and making his family feel unsafe in their own home.
But mainly, we feel violated. We no longer feel safe in our own home.
Jax Films has publicly called on YouTube to demonetize Sniper Wolf's channel for the post, which would prevent her from generating revenue on her videos. Sniper Wolf has denied any wrongdoing, arguing that Jax Films has defamed her by accusing her of doxing. Sniper Wolf also claimed that Jax Films, far from being a victim, was the one who had been harassing her by making numerous videos that accuse her of stealing content with lazy reaction videos.
This guy's entire channel.
Yeah, that's not the same thing as doxing.
Every single video for the past few months has been about me.
Sniper Wolf then suggested that she might have to get a restraining order against him. So now we have two content creators who have viciously accused each other of various civil and criminal violations. So the question is, who is correct here? And since none of them run their own successful YouTube channel, I'm happy to answer this question. Now, for those of you who aren't terminally online, Jack Douglas, known professionally as Jacksfilm, is a YouTuber known for his satirical comedy videos and parodies. One of Jacksfilm's first viral videos was the WTF Blanket, a parody of the Snuggie, which garnered millions of views and was featured on CNN.
Well, morons, now there's hope with the new What the F blanket. The blanket that'll ruin your sex life.
He's also the host of a pair of web series, Yesterday I Asked You, and Your Grammar Sucks. And since joining YouTube in 2006, Jacksfilms has gained over 5 million subscribers. And on the other side of the fight is Leah Shalesh, aka Sniperwolf, a streamer and content creator. Since launching her YouTube channel in 2013, Sniperwolf has acquired over 34 million followers on YouTube and millions more of fans across TikTok, Instagram, and Twitch. Sniperwolf's channels feature a variety of content such as video game character, cosplays, anime, video game, live streaming, etc. And while her gaming videos earned her back-to-back Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards for Favorite Gamer, Sniperwolf is perhaps best known for making videos in which she reacts to other people's content.
That stupid idea of yours, it's never gonna take off. I won't be caught dead wearing a cheap bag like this.
Now, this epic feud finds its roots in April of 2022 following reports that Sniperwolf and her then-boyfriend had purchased a $7 million mansion in Arizona. In October of 2022, Jacksfilms released a video entitled Sniperwolf, announcing that he had launched a secondary YouTube channel called Jacksfilms with 3 capital J's because he was so inspired by her reaction videos, imploring his audience to help me get a mansion too. In reality, this secondary YouTube channel, which states credit to the creators in the bio, is predominantly dedicated to criticizing and parodying Sniperwolf for what Jacksfilms characterizes as profiting off of other creators' work through lazy reaction videos. Responding on Twitter, Sniperwolf dismissed Jacksfilms' criticism, writing, "Wah, I can't stand that a female YouTuber is getting more views than me, even though I make the same content. Grr, life is hard." She then writes that, quote, "No one ever attacks the male react channels," and suggests people like Jacksfilms are envious of her success. And while Jacksfilms has directed a lot of criticism towards Sniperwolf, he's also long been a vocal opponent of lazy reaction videos, famously going after now ex-YouTuber Jinx nearly a decade ago, who was famous for making
That's the
lazy
one
reaction
who
content before it was
who
officially
iDub
banned.
said he was gonna box.
Video, man. That was just hella tight. I really like the part where you played my video in its entirety and then didn't really react to it, just kind of sat there.
And more recently, Jacksfilm has gone after singer-turned-TikTok star Jason Derulo. If you've ever heard a song of his, you'd know it because he says his name all the time.
I don't know who
But after
Jason
a year of fighting
Derulo
online,
is.
the pair's feud spilled into the real world. On October 13th, Sniperwolf posted an Instagram story asking her millions of followers, quote, "Should I go visit Jacksfilms? He lives 5 minutes away from my shoot." And in another Instagram post, Sniperwolf posted a photo of Jacksfilms' Los Angeles home
What
from
the
the
fuck
outside,
was she
imploring him, quote,
shooting?
"Let's talk like adults." And despite quickly
All she
deleting
really
the post,
does
Jacksfilms
is,
was shocked and alarmed to
like
learn
reaction
that in the middle of a
videos.
live stream that Sniperwolf had showed up to his house late at night.
Shut up.
She's literally outside your door. Like 5 minutes ago posted.
Wait, what?
She's literally right outside your Oh house. my god. This is happening right now. Call
Wait,
the
so
police.
this happened on his stream?
And after the stream ended, Jacksfilms ripped
That's
into
fucking
Sniperwolf
funny.
on Twitter, accusing her of having doxed him by posting a photo of his home on Instagram while describing the incident as creepy, gross, and violating. Quote, "What you do is disgusting, you steal content, and you stalk YouTubers." Now, if your privacy has been invaded by a YouTuber, you're gonna want a great lawyer, and my
shit.
friend the Eagle team can help. If you've been in a car crash, dealt with sexual harassment, or suffered from cancer, or have a loved one who did, we can help represent you or help find you the right attorney. It's so important to get a lawyer right away to make sure that you get a full recovery. Just click on the link that's in the description for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team. The link is below. The following day, Jacksfilms recorded a video expressing his outrage about the previous night's events.
Last night, Sniperwolf, a massive YouTuber, showed up outside of our home, recorded a video of our home, and then posted it to her 5.6 million Instagram followers, goading me with the line, "Let's talk like adults." In my 17 years on YouTube, I've never once had someone come to my home and vaguely threaten me.
Jack's wife, Erin, also voiced her concerns, writing that Sniperwolf took a video of the house and alleged that she, quote, posted it on her Instagram for all to see, with the intention of trying to, quote, instigate a confrontation. Quote, "I now have to worry about what she, as one of your favored creators or one of her many fans, may do to harm me or my family." She then pleaded for YouTube to take action to help the Douglas family and, quote, keep us safe. Then firing back at Jacksfilms, Sniperwolf denied wrongdoing while asserting that his videos attacking her content was tantamount to harassment. Quote, "This creep has been harassing me for months," then plays victim saying, "I threatened him when I just wanted to talk to him. I have no ill intentions. It's so sad when people have to constantly create drama to pay bills." And Jacksfilms mocked Sniperwolf's claim that she had no
Just
ill
like
intentions.
her-
Quote, "Sniperwolf,
just like
you showed
she
up to our
does."
home tonight and filmed it for your 5 million plus IG followers to see. That's called doxing." After Sniperwolf's posting of and visit to the Douglas family home, many content creators were outraged by her actions and affirmed their support for Jacksfilms.
Feels like the most immature, irresponsible use of power in the world.
So Jacksfilms has accused Sniperwolf of doxing him, which he described on Twitter as, quote, "a literal crime." Well, in meme form. In her defense, Sniperwolf claims that she has no idea how to dox anyone, and then suggested Jacksfilms could not be doxed because he had allegedly posted his address on Google.
I think that that's
So, what is
probably,
doxing and is it a crime? Well, in general,
someone
doxing
else
refers to the
probably
act of publishing
posted
identifying
his
information about a third party
address
online without a
on
victim's permission.
Google.
And colloquially,
I
there
would
are generally
assume.
two types of doxing. One involves releasing truly private information, and the other is releasing information that is publicly available, but not widely disseminated or accessed. And while deleting the photo that Sniperwolf took was probably the right move, the internet is forever, so the image almost certainly exists somewhere. So is doxing illegal? Well, to give everyone's favorite answer, it depends. The release of publicly available and legally obtained information is generally not a crime. In fact, doxing itself is not specifically illegal in most US jurisdictions. But if doxing is done with malicious intent to injure, individuals could be prosecuted for a variety of crimes such as stalking or harassment. And doxing can also violate the private terms of service of other platforms like
I hope
YouTube,
I win this.
potentially resulting in demonetization or deplatforming. But interestingly, California does have an anti-doxing law. Now, Jack's Films' home, which Sniper Wolf visited and briefly posted a video of on the internet, is located in Los Angeles. And to determine if any crimes or torts have been committed, we have to analyze the conduct under California law. In California, doxing, also known as indirect internet harassment, is illegal if it rises to the level of cyber harassment, as outlined in California Penal Code section 653.2. Someone commits cyber harassment if they, with intent to place another person in reasonable fear for his or her safety, or the safety of the other person's immediate family, by means of an electronic communication device, and without consent of the other person, and for the purposes of imminently causing that other person unwanted physical contact, injury, or harassment by a third party, electronically distributes, publishes, emails, hyperlinks, or makes available for downloading personal identifying information, including but not limited to a digital image of another person or an electronic message of a harassing nature about another person, which would be likely to incite or produce that unlawful action. Okay, that is a mouthful, but that's not the end of it, because personal identifying information is not really defined by that statute, but likely under the right circumstances, it could include things like posting the target's residential address, digital images of the target, phone number, information about their family, and so on. And under the statute, harassment is defined as a knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a specific person that a reasonable person would consider a seriously alarming, seriously annoying, seriously tormenting, or seriously terrorizing the person, and that serves no legitimate purpose. Now, here, Jack's Films and his wife have both stated that Sniper Wolf posting a video of their house has made them feel unsafe and fear retaliation by her fans. But their subjective belief is not the end of the inquiry. Would a reasonable person feel the same way? Of course, there's a difference between a photo of someone's house and actually posting the address itself. That could make a big difference here.
Yeah.
And then there's the requirement for imminent action, which probably stems from the Constitution and the First Amendment. And the fact that they haven't received this kind of harassment, at least none that I'm aware of at the moment,
yeah, there's no...
after this alleged doxing, might show that...
Yeah, because there's no damages, then maybe they have no legal
it did not, in
recourse.
fact, rise to the level of imminent action from the people that were viewing this post. Of course, no one wants their home address to be on the internet, especially in a public forum, and especially if you have some level of celebrity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it rises to the level of the cyber harassment statute, and it doesn't necessarily mean that once it's public, something bad is immediately going to happen.
Sniper Wolf is already making light of the situation, as if stalking someone is a quirky thing to do.
But of course, even if the fear of Jack's Films' family is shown to be reasonable, and that's definitely possible, the statute requires that the information was posted with the purpose of imminently causing that other person unwanted physical contact, injury, or harassment. And so far, everything that Sniper Wolf has said online about this incident seems to indicate that she didn't intend for any of this to happen. She just didn't quite understand all the ramifications of what she was doing, but did not intend harassment here.
I'm sorry for what you're going through.
And then on top of it, there are legitimate First Amendment considerations. Just because you post something on Instagram doesn't mean that you don't enjoy robust First Amendment protections to publicize the things that you want to publicize. So when the government makes it illegal to disseminate certain information, they run right up against the First Amendment, and it's likely that Sniper Wolf enjoys some amount of protection to make these kinds of posts, and that's why there are such strict requirements for the cyber harassment statute. Now, all that concerns the first kind of doxing, where you publicize information that is otherwise public, but there's still the kind of doxing where you publicize a private fact. Jack's Films could try to argue that the briefly posted photo of their home constitutes an invasion of privacy, and maybe in the colloquial sense, but probably not in the legal sense. In California, there is a cause of action for public disclosure of private information that requires a public disclosure of a private fact, which would be offensive and objectionable to the reasonable person, and which is not of legitimate public concern. And if Sniper Wolf had posted something truly private, they might have a claim. But I wager that the outside of your house and possibly even your address doesn't qualify as private for the purposes of a claim of invasion of privacy. And looking to one of California's most famous failed invasion of privacy suits, which also involves a photo of a celebrity's home online, suggests an action would be doomed. For example, in May of 2003, actress Barbara Streisand sued photographer Kenneth Adelman for invasion of privacy for displaying a photo of her clifftop home in Malibu on his website documenting the coastline of California. She demanded $10 million in damages, and that the photographer remove the photo of...
Did he say that it was her house?
Of her mansion immediately from his website. But a judge threw out the case in December of 2003, ruling that the photo did not invade Streisand's privacy and that the photo was protected speech concerning a matter of public interest. The judge also deemed the lawsuit an effort to silence the photographer's speech in violation of the state's anti-slap law and ordered Babs to pay his legal fees. And ironically, Streisand's efforts to remove this photo had the unintended effect of drawing more attention to it, resulting in nearly 420,000 people visiting the photographer's website to view the image. 2 years later, Mike Masnick of TechDirt dubbed the phenomenon of unintentionally bringing unwanted attention to something you'd rather suppress, the Streisand effect, and now you too know the etymology of the Streisand effect. So photos of Streisand's home being online for months did not constitute an invasion of privacy, then the very brief Instagram post of Jack's Film's home on Sniper Wolf's Instagram likely doesn't either.
Shop Kohl's for a head start on gifting. Get a Sephora set for $49. Women's sweaters starting at $24.99. And save on a Ninja pressure cooker. Then take 20% off other finds. $10 off $50 spent and earn Kohl's cash. Kohl's.
But that's just the law. Despite what you might have heard on the internet, YouTube is not the government, and it is not bound by the First Amendment. It is a private party, and it can generally set whatever terms it wants. So even if Sniper Wolf's post didn't rise to the level of criminal activity, the mere act of doxing the Douglas home, even if the post was later deleted, arguably violated YouTube's terms of service and could lead to Sniper Wolf to be deplatformed and or demonetized. YouTube's terms of service prohibit what it describes as, quote, harmful behaviors like threats or doxing. Now, the night that Sniper Wolf shared an image of the Douglas home, Jack's Films tagged YouTube on Twitter, asking the company to demonetize this dangerous creator or kick her off the platform entirely. Now, the next day, Jack's Film released a video begging YouTube to enforce its own policies and demonetize and or deplatform Sniper Wolf before someone got hurt. And on October 17th, Jack's Film stated that he had sent YouTube a video and reiterated his belief that Sniper Wolf's actions constituted a clear example of doxing and a clear violation of your policy against threats and doxing. And on October 20th, to many people's disbelief, YouTube actually acted. They stated on Twitter, confirming Sniper Wolf has received a temporary monetization suspension per creator responsibility policies. Off-platform actions that put others' personal safety at risk, harm our community, and the behavior on both sides isn't what we want on YouTube, hoping everyone helps move this convo to a better place. This response was roundly criticized because, as many people correctly pointed out, this is literal both sidesing, that Jack's Films had simply created videos criticizing what he saw as low-value content and creating some parodies, whereas it was Sniper Wolf that engaged in the doxing behavior, which was a violation of the terms of service. It was Sniper Wolf who had arguably doxed Jack's Films and violated the terms of service. It was not Jack's Films himself who... at least according to the terms of service, has done nothing wrong here. And within the hour, Sniper Wolf responded to YouTube's comment saying, "Let me start by saying I'm sorry for my recent actions. It is inexcusable. I'm sorry to Jack's Films, YouTube, the entire creator community, and my incredible fans for not being a better example of appropriate conflict resolution. Jack's Film, while we certainly don't see eye to eye and have our differences, I'm sorry for reacting the way I did when I should have taken the opportunity to show young creators how adults and professionals resolve conflict by communicating directly, respectfully, and privately, not for views or content, but a meaningful example of how conflict should be solved. I will reach out directly and hope we can find some time to connect and communicate respectfully. I'd also like to thank YouTube for holding me accountable. I deserve it, respect the decision, and appreciate the opportunity to learn and grow from a true lapse in judgment." And honestly, I've seen worse YouTuber apologies, and I hope she does learn from this moment, because even if her actions didn't rise to the level of being illegal, they were kind of a dick move. So now that Sniper Wolf has been temporarily demonetized, she'll probably need to find ways to manage her finances and save money. Luckily, today's sponsor, Rocket Money, can help, because sometimes the sponsor segues just write themselves. Now, recently I had a problem trying to get a handle on all my subscriptions. Between my personal and professional subscriptions, I was paying out almost $20,000 a year in subscriptions. And yeah, I know, these are not all streaming services. Being a lawyer is really expensive and has some very expensive subscriptions. Now, I hadn't been paying too much attention to what I was subscribed to, and I couldn't believe once I started to
Johnson, you're fired. Why? It's not you. It's your shirt. But it's Casual Friday. Well, you've taken it too far. Look at Gibson. He's wearing a True Classic tee.
Fucking
It fits
sweet.
him tight in all the right places, but leaves the perfect amount of room in the front. God, I hate that guy. He looks so damn good in that shirt, he can basically do whatever the hell he wants around here. Gibson! Yeah, boss? You're a goddamn stud. Thanks, boss. True Classic is designed to enhance the male physique in all the right places. Right, Jimson?
That's right, boss. I have strong arms, but also a little bit of a gut. But you wouldn't know because I wear True Classic.
And if you're a skinny guy, True Classic fits tight around the arms and accentuates your biceps.
But how can Jimson afford premium t-shirts? He's the worst salesman here, and I don't even think he can read.
Damn it, Johnson, we all know Jimson can't read. But at least he knows that True Classic is completely affordable. And if you buy right now, you can get 20% off your first order.
I don't need to know how to read to know that over 200,000 people gave True Classic a 5 stars.
Good job, Jimson, that's right, 5 stars.
5 stars? Let me try one on.
My God, Johnson, I don't know how I never noticed before, but you're stunning.
I want a raise.
Consider it done. But wait a minute. Are those true classic pants?
That's right. I just got them off the website, and get this. They even have activewear, polos, long sleeve tees, fleeces, and even socks and underwear.
Incredible. Jimson, why can't you be more like Johnson?
Well, what should I do, boss?
Jimson, you sexy fool. Isn't it obvious? You need to go to the True Classic website and buy all of those items right now. Click it.
Click it.
Blank.
Click it. Click it now. Click it. Click the link.
This video was brought to you by Surfshark. Hello friends, my name is JJ, and today I thought we would talk about Halloween. As you know, I am quite interested in the various things that make up American culture, and I would say that Halloween has got to be up there in the list of the top 10 most iconically American things of all. Like, check out this little children's book of all the countries of the world I bought when I was in Japan. When you go to the page about the United States, you can see that they have rocket ship, football, Statue of Liberty, and Halloween. Now, like much of what defines modern American culture, Halloween is a product of two of the most culturally revolutionary eras of American history: the late 1800s, often called the Victorian Age, and the immediate aftermath of World War II. And today I thought it might be fun to talk about Halloween from the perspective of the first era, because I recently bought this very comprehensive book about Halloween in America called Halloween in America, and it has a lot of very cool primary source material documenting what early Halloween was like, as well as documenting the origins of some of our most beloved Halloween traditions, alongside a couple of other ones that haven't quite withstood the test of time. But before we get into any of that, let us just hear a quick word from today's video sponsor, Surfshark, and the spooky dangers of an unprotected internet connection. Hello friends, so we all like to use the internet when we are out and about, connecting our laptops and tablets and phones to whatever public Wi-Fi happens to be available in our favorite shopping malls, fast food restaurants, and doctor's office waiting rooms. But public Wi-Fi, especially the sort of Wi-Fi that any rando can join without having to log in, can also be very dangerous by virtue of being open to anyone. Using sneaky hacking techniques, unscrupulous characters can take advantage of the open nature of public Wi-Fi connections to gain access to all of the data that is flying around. When you use public Wi-Fi, your computer is basically shouting what it's doing to anyone with the skills to listen. But you don't need to take my word for it. Your typically authentic cultural tradition, which is to say it is something that has been around for a long time, it has a lot of well-understood customs and rituals, and it evolved gradually from hazy ancient practices into something that is still relevant to modern times. But that said, I think that when we analyze American culture, it is important that we don't overstate the supposed ancient roots of our modern traditions, just because I think that by virtue of being a new culture in the new world, Americans are not inclined to be a particularly backwards-looking people. So while it is true that a few of the core foundations of Halloween, particularly the date of October 31st, can be traced back to centuries-old practices in pre-Christian Europe, it is also obviously the case that most of us who celebrate Halloween today don't really know or care about any of that, and don't really understand the holiday to be honoring a link to that past in any meaningful way. I do think, however, that it is relatively mainstream knowledge that the name Halloween means All Hallows Evening, and that hallow is an Old English word for saint or saintly. We still use a version of this word today when we talk about the hallowed grounds or the hallowed halls of some place we revere. Calling October 31st All Hallows Eve was a reference to the fact that November 1st used to be a Christian holiday called All Hallows Day, so it was a Christmas Eve, Christmas Day sort of thing. And the fact that the early Christian church scheduled it on this particular date is usually believed to have been a deliberate effort on their part to displace a pre-Christian festival known as Samhain that was popular in parts of Europe at the time. Parts of Europe like Northern Britain. Northern Britain is home to the Celtic peoples of modern-day Ireland and Scotland, who are often seen as maintaining more pre-Christian elements in their culture than the English, who evolved from an Anglo-Saxon culture that assimilated more comprehensively into Christianity. And as a result, some aspects of the old Samhain festival continue to be practiced in Celtic culture even centuries after most Celts converted to Jesus, including rituals and traditions that were demonized by the more dogmatic English Christians as pagan or occult. And this is a fact that would have been increasingly well known in late 19th century America, given that one of the great fads of the growing middle class at that time was a fascination with all things occult. During this period, it had become much less taboo to be into ghosts and monsters and other things that would have previously been considered quite anti-Christian and demonic. This was partially a reflection of growing
Huh. I don't get it. I don't understand how you solve this. It doesn't tell me anything. Do I have to hit it in the order that it would be in? Damn it. Not enough money.
Secularism in American culture, and partially just a byproduct of the sort of curiosity and creativity that tends to flow from an increasingly wealthy, literate, and educated society.
I think I'm probably
now, one problem with being a middle-class person in late 19th century America was that life was pretty boring. This was an era before literally any form of modern entertainment had been invented, so one of the main ways that people amused themselves was just constantly throwing parties all of the time on any available pretext. So there would be harvest parties and garden parties and Thanksgiving parties and Christmas parties and 4th of July parties and May Day parties and all the rest.
I was really hoping they weren't
going
to attack
this
me.
is probably the main reason that Halloween as we know it exists today. Obscure Christian holidays like All Hallows Day were better known in the 19th century than they are now, and thanks to the influence of authentic cultural tradition, which is to say it is something that has been around for a long time, it has a lot of well-understood customs and rituals, and it evolved gradually from hazy ancient practices into something that is still relevant to modern times. But that said, I think that when we analyze American culture, it is important that we don't overstate the supposed ancient roots of our modern traditions, just because I think that by virtue of being a new culture in the new world, Americans are not inclined to be a particularly backwards-looking people. So while it is true that a few of the core foundations of Halloween, particularly the date of October 31st, can be traced back to centuries-old practices in pre-Christian Europe, it is also obviously the case that most of us who celebrate Halloween today don't really know or care about any of that, and don't really understand the holiday to be honoring a link to that past in any meaningful way. I do think, however, that it is relatively mainstream knowledge that the name Halloween means All Hallows Evening, and that hallow is an Old English word for saint or saintly. We still use a version of this word today when we talk about the hallowed grounds or the hallowed halls of some place we revere. Calling October 31st All Hallows Eve was a reference to the fact that November 1st used to be a Christian holiday called All Hallows Day, so it was a Christmas Eve, Christmas Day sort of thing. And the fact that the early Christian church scheduled it on this particular date is usually believed to have been a deliberate effort on their part to displace a pre-Christian festival known as Samhain that was popular in parts of Europe at the time. Parts of Europe like Northern Britain. Northern Britain is home to the Celtic peoples of modern-day Ireland and Scotland, who are often seen as maintaining more pre-Christian elements in their culture than the English, who evolved from an Anglo-Saxon culture that assimilated more comprehensively into Christianity. And as a result, some aspects of the old Samhain festival continue to be practiced in Celtic culture even centuries after most Celts converted to Jesus, including rituals and traditions that were demonized by the more dogmatic English Christians as pagan or occult. And this is a fact that would have been increasingly well known in late 19th century America, given that one of the great fads of the growing middle class of that time was a fascination with all things occult. During this period, it had become much less taboo to be into ghosts and monsters and other things that would have previously been considered quite anti-Christian and demonic. This was partially a reflection of growing secularism in American culture, and partially just a byproduct of the sort of curiosity and creativity that tends to flow from an increasingly wealthy, literate, and educated society. Now, one problem with being a middle-class person in late 19th century America was that life was pretty boring. This was an era before literally any form of modern entertainment had been invented, so one of the main ways that people amused themselves was just constantly throwing parties all of the time on any available pretext. So there would be harvest parties and garden parties and Thanksgiving parties and Christmas parties and 4th of July parties and May Day parties and all the rest of it. And in all honesty, this is probably the main reason that Halloween as we know it exists today. Obscure Christian holidays like All Hallows Day were better known in the 19th century than they are now. And thanks to the influence of Celtic immigrants in the United States and growing public fascination with all things supernatural, late Victorian-era America naturally saw an increased awareness of how All Hallows Eve was connected to weird and interesting Celtic occultist stuff. So why not use it as a pretext for another party? Now, what's interesting is that the book says that in the early days, Americans played up the Celtic angle of Halloween a lot more explicitly, particularly the Scottish angle. The author says, the earliest symbols of Halloween, which appear at the turn of the century, include Scottish thistles, tartan designs, and other traditional Scottish themes, indicating its Scottish origins. It's often thought to be an Irish holiday, but the earliest decorations never show shamrocks, leprechauns, etc. These Scottish symbols quickly faded in favor of stuff linking All Hallows Eve to the American harvest season, however, including fall colors like orange and brown, the big full harvest moon, scarecrows, farms, and of course, pumpkins. Pumpkins are a fruit native to the Americas and have been sentimentalized for centuries as one of the great symbolic bounties of the New World, given how big they can grow. There was an old folk tradition in Europe of making lanterns for festivals out of the crappy little vegetables that they grow over there. And the only reason we make pumpkin lanterns on Halloween is because American pumpkins proved so much better. Jack-o'-lanterns are probably the oldest continuously used symbol of Halloween and appear prominently in Victorian-era postcards in more or less the same form that we see them today. The name jack-o'-lantern is a centuries-old expression referring to a spooky floating flame. Spooky floating flames being an old-fashioned scary thing that people don't care as much about anymore. The other big one being the
Just because we're apart doesn't mean we can't stay connected and adventure with friends. There are great ways to keep your D&D campaign running or even start a new one, all from the comfort of your couch or your computer desk. Here's how you can jump into D&D online. Presented by Roll20.
Should I go kill this dude? Whew. I'm gonna recruit a lord over here. Actually, I don't have enough money to do that.
Will-o'-the-wisp. There is a story that you often hear these days that says that the name jack-o'-lantern supposedly refers to an ancient Irish legend about a guy named Jack who had to carry around his soul in a turnip. But this is almost certainly a story that was made up in more recent times to justify the tradition, rather than vice versa. As that previous quote alluded to, the Irish like to take a lot of credit for bringing Halloween to America, and today Halloween is a fairly big deal in Ireland. But this is one of those cases where the culture of immigrants in America actually had a bigger cultural influence on the motherland than the motherland did on the immigrants. Sort of like how Italian Americans only made pizza a big deal in Italy after they left, as I discussed in a previous award-winning video. So the Victorian party people love to dress up for their soirees, and as a result, the earliest Halloween costumes understood the word in a more old-fashioned way, in the sense of just being vaguely occult-themed dresses and suits and things. The idea of dressing as something specific for Halloween came later. I will note that a distressing lot of these old brochures describe the ideal Halloween costume as being super gay, but of course that was just the word people used back then to describe stuff that was colorful or fun. The concept of kids going door to door in costumes to trick or treat seems to be a pretty recent thing, with the earliest documented reference to it, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, being found in an Alberta newspaper from 1927. So if you were my age, it is likely that your grandparents were born before trick-or-treating. It is not really clear why or how this particular tradition of handing out free candy to random neighborhood children evolved, though the most common theories are that it's just a sort of ritualized recognition of the fact that by the 1920s, Halloween had become known for tricks and treats. The tricks part probably came about as people realized that wearing a costume at night made it easy to play pranks, pranks being another very common way that people kept themselves amused in the old days. While the treat part was probably just an outgrowth of the sort of middle-class generosity that was becoming more common in the late 19th century. As ordinary people began to have more food and stuff to share with others, traditions of individualized giving became more common. Giving to charities, giving birthday presents to your friends, that sort of thing. So giving candy to the neighborhood children on the occasion of a big holiday seems consistent with this general trend. But if trick-or-treating didn't come about until the 1920s, what sort of Halloween traditions existed before? Well, most of them were pretty party-based. Some of them still exist in some form today, or at least are still present in the popular imagination. Bobbing for apples or playing other apple-related games were common Halloween party activities in the early days of the holiday. Apples, of course, being another fruit associated with the fall harvest season, and a fruit that most Americans had only recently started eating, as we learned in this award-winning video. Sometimes Halloween partygoers would eat other traditional autumn-themed foods as well, like corn or nuts or pumpkin pie. But the biggest Halloween thing of all was fortune-telling. Fortune-telling, and especially communicating with the spirit world, was a huge fad among upper and middle-class Americans in the Victorian age, and this played a major role in helping Halloween parties go mainstream. In the traditional Celtic folklore, All Hallows Eve, October 31st, was the final day before winter, and the changing of the seasons was associated with the coming and going of spirits, and thus a time in which it was easiest for humans to speak with them. So 19th century Americans seized on this fact and used Hallows Eve as a pretext to gather their friends together and do the various fortune-telling and divination rituals and games that were popular at the time. This included stuff like tarot cards, seances, stuff with fire, and some even weirder routines that are long forgotten now. I was surprised at how many of these old-timey postcards depicted looking in the mirror as this very iconic Halloween thing. This is a reference to a practice known as scrying, which was when you sort of stared meditatively into the mirror until an image of the future, or your dead relatives, or the man you were going to marry,
That's
or
just
whatever,
like a hallucination.
began to appear. This fell out of fashion as a tradition as more formal forms of occultism fell out of fashion. But it's worth noting that scrying is also where the cliche of a witch looking into her magic crystal ball comes from. On that note, the spiritualist origins of Halloween are probably the main reason why witches in general are such a common Halloween icon, given witches had long been America's go-to symbol of a creepy person who had rejected Christianity for the occult since at least the time of the infamous Salem witch trials in the late 17th century. Our modern stereotypical image of a witch as an old crone with a pointy hat flying on a broomstick seems like the sort of thing you might have expected the American party favor companies to have just made up for the purposes of selling all of this newfangled Halloween merch. But I was surprised to learn it has actually been the Western world's dominant cliche for several hundred years, as you can see in this woodblock print from 15th century Germany, or this early 17th century engraving of a famous witch from England. But despite the long-standing popularity of drawing witches in this way, once again, no one really seems to know why we started doing it. Actually, can I just pause for a second here and make a general statement? I've now made over 500 videos, and if there's one thing I have consistently learned from researching all of these different cultural things, it's that in most cases, no one has any clue where anything weird comes from. If there is a tradition in our culture that seems inexplicable, it is very likely that it is just something that has mutated out of some long, forgotten, obscure thing from hundreds of years ago, and there exists no persuasive historical evidence to help us clearly understand how we got from there to here. There are a lot of quote-unquote educational channels out there that when faced with an intriguing mystery, will just Google it and then feed their audience whatever BS explanation they found on the first search result. But not me. My promise to you is that I will consistently err on the side of just openly acknowledging the unsolvable mysteries of our culture and avoid feeding you these cute little stories that might be intellectually satisfying but usually have very little hard proof supporting them. If you want to speculate about why you think witches wear pointy hats, go nuts, but you don't need to hear someone else's speculation.
I got
anyway,
defeated?
American Halloween monsters is a topic I am pretty interested in, and
I thought
already
it
made
said
a
that I
whole
would win.
award-winning video about the most iconic ones that we see today, like Frankenstein, Mummy, and Dracula. But as I explained in that video, these characters all come from the post-war Halloween era, since they were all based on characters from the various Hollywood movies that had become popular by that time. The canon of American Halloween monsters that you saw in the late 19th century, by contrast, was a lot more limited. Alongside witches and their little black cat buddies, early American Halloween decorations mostly just featured owls, bats, ghosts, and red devils. That last one is a good example of just how secular America was getting by the turn of the last century. Certainly just a few decades prior, having a bunch of illustrations of Satan in your home would have raised a few questions. Skeletons and skulls featured prominently as well. Bones have long been symbols of death in Western culture, and really all cultures for obvious reasons. But it's been suggested that the American concept of whimsical Halloween skeleton people dancing and having fun and all of that,
'Twas just getting dark on Halloween night. Monsters and ghosts were out for a fright. You're the envy of the boulevard.
might be an outgrowth of Mexican cultural influence on the United States. Mexicans, of course, have their own spooky things themed holiday, the Day of the Dead, which is celebrated the day after Halloween, All Hallows Day. And Day of the Dead also arose from fusing this Christian holiday with various pre-Christian traditions involving the macabre, in this case, those of Mexico's indigenous people. But overall, it is mostly just a weird coincidence that these two major nations of the New World both wound up inventing occult-themed holidays in such close proximity to each other. But yeah, traditional Day of the Dead decorations have long included skeletons, including goofy, silly ones. And when you look at some of the early American Halloween decorations, it's not unreasonable to suspect that at least some Mexican influence was at play here. These little jack-o'-lantern goblin critters were very popular in the early days as well, a lot more so than they are now, at least. Next to witches, they were probably the most commonly seen monsters on Halloween postcards and toys of the Victorian age. Keeping with the harvest theme, they were often depicted as little scarecrow-like creatures. If you've seen that terrible sequel to The Wizard of Oz from the 1980s, you know that there was a creepy jack-o'-lantern monster thing in that movie, which is in turn based on a character that appeared in the actual book sequel to The Wizard of Oz, The Marvelous Land of Oz, which was written in 1904. Alrighty, so I think that is about all I've got to say about old-timey Halloween. Like I said, however, this is only really half the story. Like most great American cultural traditions, it wasn't until after the Second World War that the holiday really kicked into high gear and headed towards becoming the $12 billion extravaganza that it is today. But that mayhaps is a story for another time. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.
While everyone on social media is flexing their big baller lifestyle, I think it is such a virtue to be able to live frugally. And for you guys, if you can take in this mentality, just generally, I think it'll change your life, because I know it has for me. Let me just tell you a little bit about my story and how it's benefited my life, and then I'm going to share with you 10 tips about how you can incorporate this frugal living into your life. And so for me, when I moved out of my parents' house, one of my key missions was to be able to do Daily Disciple full time. And one of the aspects of that mission was, okay, how can I cut down on costs in my life in order to actually make this feasible, in order to actually do what I want to do, because it was important to me to have the job that I wanted. How can I cut down things that I don't care as much about in order to accomplish my goals? So whatever your goals are, whether that's to get out of debt, whether that's to save money, whether that's to have a job that maybe pays a little bit less but you really, really enjoy, frugal living can be a great avenue towards that. And not just towards greed, but towards investment and generosity, and we'll talk about that at the very end. So these are the 10 tips that I have, and I'd love to hear your guys' tips in the comments down below, because I am by no means an expert, but these are just some of the things that have helped me. One of my main key philosophies was, I never will eat out alone. I'll never eat out alone.
And over the whole world rose a clamor of hysterical joy.
World War I promised us a perpetual peace, and it failed.
This
and
is so
also,
confusing.
just generally, I won't eat out very much at all. If it's an option, I'm going to say, hey, let's eat in tonight, because eating at home is so much less expensive. It just gets so crazy. I've been eating out a little bit more recently, and just seeing my credit card bill at the end of the month and realizing, man, this adds up quick. And there's lots of great things that you can do at home to save money, buy in bulk, just portion things out, meal prepping, or just even meal planning, I've heard is just a great way, and making sure that you're utilizing the things that you buy. So the second thing is, do not buy the car unless you have to. I put off buying a car till I was like 23 years old. And part of the reason I did that was I was able to utilize my parents' vehicle occasionally, so that was a real blessing. So some of you might not have that resource, and I understand that. But at the same time, I would bike most places during the summer or walk. And then during the winter, there was a period of time for one winter where I just walked to work every day. And that was like negative 30 Celsius. And so I just bundled up for a 30-minute, 40-minute walk to the office when I had another job. And that was pretty painful. But at the same time, I did it because I knew in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to live like this forever. There are some seasons to some frugal living where I was going to say, okay, I'm going to buy a car eventually. But for this season, I'm going to push through in order to save some money. And it's also good for your health, too. If you are in a climate where you can bike places, I would love to bike more often to places. But it's just cold and snowy and slippery so often around here in Winnipeg that it's not as feasible. The third tip to frugal living is drinking water. Now, Isaac, why would you?
Yeah.
What's up with drinking water? What does that have anything to do with frugal living? Well, mainly because we spend so much money on just drinks of all kinds. I know for me, if I wasn't as intentional about just focusing on drinking water, I would buy energy drinks and I would buy pop. But by not doing that, just focusing on drinking water, not only is my health probably better overall and more kind of regulated, not having all that caffeine in me all the time, but it just saves me a whole bunch of money.
I do drink a lot of caffeine. I have been drinking a lot of caffeine lately.
I'm just drinking, like, I could drink 4 or 5 in a day if I'm editing, if I'm around my computer. It's just not good for me. So it has a lot of different benefits, but drink water, everybody. This is a good one. The fourth thing is, and a lot of people won't want to do this, but cheap staples that you can make quickly. I work at home. I work a bunch, and I'm very focused on Daily Disciple, Men on Mission, just the whole ministry in general. And I have a lot of other social things that I do. So it's about finding staples that are easy to cook and cheap in general. And so honestly, what that lands me on is eggs. I eat a lot of eggs. People make fun of me for it because they're like, Isaac and his like 5 eggs in the morning. But hey, it fills me up. It's cheap. I probably won't live like this forever because it's not the most well-rounded nutritional diet. I can readily recognize that. But honestly, for guys that are young and, single, living on their own or with a bunch of roommates, I think there's seasons where you can cut some corners because you want to achieve certain goals. This is a bonus thing. I didn't even think about this, but I'm looking to the left of me, and let me see if I can even pick this up. Oh, here it is. Okay, this is my herbs and herbs, or whatever you want to call them.
JJ used to do this.
Basil, dill, parsley, and chives, and I add them to all my food, and it's free because I'm growing it, and that's awesome. So I highly recommend that if you have a window. I just got these tin buckets at IKEA. Drilled some holes in them, put some soil in there, and then I got the plant, and then I just put them in this longer vessel to protect from spillage when the water seeps through the holes. And I got that at like a hardware store. And so now I have this awesome array of herbs whenever I want them. Tip number 6 is maintain a minimalist mentality. So often when people buy things, they see them as assets. Anytime I acquire something, this adds to my personal net worth, right? But what we need to be thinking of is, if I don't truly need this thing, then it is actually debt in a way, because it is hindering me from either the space that I need, because we all need good space, open space, and we don't want things to be cluttered. But it's also just taking up more of my mental space because I'm thinking about it. Oh, I should be using this, or I should put this here, I should move this here. It is in turn debt. So things that you don't need are debt. They're not assets. So get rid of them, or don't buy them in the first place, ideally. And that's been such a good mentality for me where, okay, I'm thinking I could use this thing, but do I really need it? Or is it just going to take up more mental space in my life because I'll feel guilty about not using it as much as I should because I spent so much money on it and all this kind of thing. So maintain a minimalist mentality. Tip number 7 is social things don't need to cost money. If you've gotten into the mentality of always going out, either restaurant or whatever else, and spending a bunch of money when you're hanging out with friends, this doesn't need to be this way. It's not just like, oh, I guess this is just what happens. No, but what you need to do is you need to change the expectations. And you do that by incorporating some other free things, right? Cook for people at your home. play board games, go on walks, play sports with other people that are free. These are all good things that people shouldn't have any problem with, but you need to shift the expectation, because if the expectation of the friendship is we always go out to a coffee shop, we always get this thing, we always get that thing, you can subtly shift those things. I'm not saying don't treat yourself every once in a while, but if you're trying to live a frugal life,
guy looks powerful as shit,
and then that'll just become the norm, and it'll become so much more easy and kind of fun. The 3 last tips here are honestly just things to remember.
Cool.
Remember that the sacrifices you make today will aid tomorrow. It's this idea of delayed gratification. So get used to saying no to things, but think about the future and what could transpire, because you're continually saying no to things that you don't need. You're not wasting all that time, energy, and money on stuff that doesn't matter. That will help you later on. Trust me, it does. I've seen the benefits and the rewards of that. The next thing is make it a game. See what the least amount you can spend in a month or a week, or how long you can live off, this certain amount of money. Make it a game. It's pretty fun, especially when you're living on your own and you're single. Like, these are things that you can do. And
yeah, I saw this coming.
I got a brand new Google Pixel 8 and a mouse case. Let's put it to the test. 3, 2, 1. And we're absolutely fine. Check the back.
What is up, you sexy YouTube mother lovers? I promise today's video is not satire, although it sounds like it probably should be. So I try not to do too many of these videos about
random. I've been seeing a lot of memes of this guy lately,
I don't think it's that engaging usually.
I don't
but,
even know who
God,
this guy is.
I couldn't not tell you guys
recently.
about this one. This lawsuit is quite possibly one of the most ridiculous things I have ever read. And I've read Twilight. Well, I told one of my high school girlfriends at some point that I read Twilight, but no. So if you're out there, sorry. But anyways, Daniel Defense, Sons of Liberty Gunworks, and a handful of other gun companies who've done absolutely nothing wrong are getting sued over memes. No, I'm not kidding. Anyhow, what started this whole thing is there was an attempted mass shooting in DC. I'm not going to name the shooter in this case because A, it's not relevant to the story, and B, fuck making those pieces of shit famous. But regardless, somebody who was almost certainly deprived of a father figure growing up went out to go try to end as much life as possible. And already, before any Europeans are in here like, oh, you Americans and your mass shootings, it's amazing any of you make it to adulthood. First off, half the statistics about American mass shootings are just straight up lies and manipulated data. Like half of the school shootings they count in the United States are basically some redneck in a parking lot with a hunting rifle and into the concrete on accident, injuring nobody.
It's like someone committing suicide.
But now it's a school shooting. But aside from that, rifle deaths, like not just scary guns like AR-15s, just rifles all across the board, all rifles, are like 350 people a year. So literally like a 1 in a million chance, which 350 is oddly close to the amount of people who are stabbed to death in the streets of the UK every year, even though their population is only like 20% the size of ours.
Yeah.
Anyhow, thankfully in this instance, the shooter was all around shit at everything apparently and ended up killing 0 people. Although 4 were injured, thankfully nothing life-threatening. Technically there was 1 death. The shooter ended up turning the gun on himself as soon as police showed up. Once again, the presence of a good guy with a gun ends the shooting threat immediately. Many such cases. Anyhow, homeboy suck starts his own rifle as soon as the cops show up, apparently afraid of dealing with the consequences of his own actions. Which, I mean, by this point, he saved the American taxpayer a good bit of money by doing so, I mean, at least he got that part right. Fast forward, as you can imagine, after the shooting was over, police raided the home of the shooter. They found several other rifles in the shooter's possession, none of which were chosen for the shooting itself and were left at home. Remember that part. That's going to come in handy here in a sec. Let's now cut to one of the victims, a woman by the name of Miss Lowy. Now, obviously, it goes without saying what happened to her was awful. But what's also awful is that some attorney decided to take advantage of her and convince her to file one of the most ridiculous lawsuits I've ever read in my entire fucking life. So without further ado, let's go ahead and crack into the lawsuit itself. Who is it in this case that is getting sued? Well, buckle up because it's fucking everybody. Let's go through them together. I'm sure if you're familiar with the gun industry, you're gonna recognize quite a few of these. Daniel Defense, Fab Defense, Fab Manufacturing, Bravo Company USA, Loyal 9 Manufacturing, Fostech, Hearing Protection LLC, Centurion Arms, Magpul Industries, Federal Cartridge Company, Vista Outdoors, Fiocchi of America, Fiocchi Munizione, Jesus Christ, I'm an uncultured fuck, Starline Brass, Surefire, Torque Mag, and John Doe's 1 through 20, collectively defendants. That is a huge
What was the lawsuit even about? I don't know.
Chunk of the gun industry. Although there's one name that stuck out to me there because I didn't really recognize it. Loyal 9 Manufacturing.
Like, why?
Who exactly is Loyal 9 Manufacturing?
Is it just because they...
So as it turns out, Loyal 9 Manufacturing is the holding company, or rather DBA Corporation, whatever, of Sons of Liberty Gunworks. Good friends of mine, and as AR guys go, you know, they're all right. But if you know your American history and you know anything about the Loyal 9, you'd know that they were a predecessor to the actual Sons of Liberty group in the American Revolution. Sons of Liberty Gunworks, we see you. It's pretty clever. Why are all of these companies being cited in this lawsuit? Well, as it turns out, the majority of them have one major thing in common. When it comes to the shooting, they weren't even there. No, I'm not being cute. I mean, their products were not even used in the shooting. Your Honor, shut the fuck up. You wasn't even there. But for real, these are companies that are now being sued because their products were used to harm other people, quote unquote, even though their products were nowhere.
Oh yeah, I did hear about this. This was just so fucking stupid. You're not gonna sue a car manufacturing company because someone ran through a crowd of people.
Near anything where people were actually being harmed. This is seriously like somebody getting in trouble for a drunk driving accident in a Kia Soul, and then Dodge and Toyota get sued because they had a Charger and a Tacoma in their fucking garage. That's somebody who spent a little bit of time in college studying law and preparing for law school. This lawsuit hurts my brain a little bit. But while pretty ridiculous, that's not even the best part of the lawsuit. That's coming up. So let's explore some of the grievances this lawsuit had with these companies. But first, let's explore our sponsor TacPack, also known as TacPack. I happen to have a wonderful box of TacPack items right here, including enhanced shooting goggles, ironic t-shirt, enhanced AR pistol grips, Radiant Raptor charging handles, a dope-ass axe that, holy shit, I can actually shave with that. Not gonna throw that one. Dope-ass backpack, and more. They also gave me this note. AK guy, AKA Senator, Congressman, House of Representatives, different things. AKA the realest BH, I'll take that one. Please enjoy the showcase of TacPack items we've sent. So let's go ahead and dive into this lawsuit. Why exactly do they believe that they can sue all of these gun companies even though they weren't even used in the shooting? Well, it's obviously because of their marketing practices. From using military-style marketing to, and I'm not fucking kidding you, memes. These companies are getting sued because they made guns look cool and were funny. I want off of Mr. Bones' wild ride. Let's take a look at some of my favorites. Defendant Fiocchi has deployed similar imagery in marketing its ammunition on its Instagram, depicting use of its product from what appears to be the balcony of a home or office rather than at a shooting range or at a game hunting setting. We have a photo of an operator here shooting off of a balcony. You know,
and?
Like a police setting or a SWAT setting or literally any operator ever. Don't know that many non-operators that are casually running a several $1,000 military IR unit on the front of their rifles. So according to this lawsuit, you can't show people who run guns for a living running guns. It gets even better because the next best complaint that I've picked out here is literally just them taking umbrage with a meme. Defendant TorqueMag posted advertisements mocking people who use shotguns instead of AR or AK rifles for home defense and promoting its high-capacity magazine along with hashtags such as Big Igloo and hashtag Civil War II Electric Boogaloo that refer to the anti-government extremist Boogaloo movement. Boogaloo. Of course, we have this meme here. AR owners, AK owners, people who use shotguns for...
The Boogaloo boys are the ones who you always see wearing the, what's it called? Like the Hawaiian shirts with the bulletproof vest. They're pretty big.
I actually agree with the sentiment of that meme. ARs and AKs are obviously better choices for home defense. I will caveat that unless you live in an apartment complex. In that case, using full power rifle rounds, not very considerate to your neighbors. Yeah, who wouldn't want the extra ammunition and the lower recoil of like an AR-15 versus a 12-gauge shotgun? Not that shotguns are bad for home defense necessarily, but I mean, I know what I use.
I would say that it depends on what situation you're in. If AR or a shotgun would be better for home defense. Like, if you're in a small little apartment, I would say that's like packed with a bunch of shit, I might want to use like a shotgun, honestly.
Lost Montana Medicaid?
Where can we find a low-cost health plan?
What about a plan that covers doctor visits?
Emergency care?
But if you're like outside and you see them coming at you, yeah, definitely an AR.
Healthcare.gov is here for you. Enroll today for coverage starting next month.
I had just started as an engineer working on the International Space Station. And I remember thinking, how are we ever going to do this? How are we going to assemble something that's over a football field in length? It takes...
That's crazy.
This is honestly the first time that I've ever reviewed an actual current legal suit, and it's turned into a gun meme review on accident. It's only going to get worse. If you're not familiar with gun meme review, of course, that's a series we do on the channel, along with Cursed Gun Images, Darwin Awards, our Assassination series. We've got some really cool stuff coming up, including actually some RPG stuff fairly soon, which I know you guys are super down for. So if you want to see that, go ahead and subscribe down below. And if you're already subscribed, be sure to check to make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube does that weird thing where they randomly unsubscribe people. But go ahead and hit that notification bell, you know, you don't want to miss an upload. Here's one from Sons of Liberty Gunworks. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a life. If you give a man a Sons of Liberty Gunworks Apocalypse gun and enough ammo, he can take all the fish he needs from the poor bastard who thought he only needed a fishing pole. It's getting a little weird out there. Mitsubishi. Sounds like a bad haiku. But yeah, they're using stuff that's obviously jokes. Like, this is talking about the apocalypse. This is completely irrelevant in the context of shooting. But they're trying to twist it to make it look like these gun companies are trying to advertise towards mass shootings, which is absolutely not the case. They're just advertising to, you know, people like us. And damn, does it work. Defendant Fiocchi's advertisements tell customers that the more guns and ammunition they have, the better off they'll be, with hashtags like never too many, never too much, and buy it all. If you know how many guns you have, you don't have enough. I actually have a fucking problem with this meme. I don't know how many guns I have off the top of my head, and I still don't have enough. Low-key though, it's really funny to see these like 10-year-old boomer memes from Facebook ending up in a fucking legal brief. Here's one from Daniel Defense all the way back in 2019. Call of Duty Modern Warfare launched today. Anyone else had a chance to play it yet? The title screen pictured here features a Daniel Defense DDM4 V7S. Video games like Call of Duty give young men like the shooter the opportunity to simulate the experience of shooting at others in a theater of war, using AR-15 rifles. No shit, that's what we use. This lawsuit has now devolved to the point where they are picking on Daniel Defense for acknowledging the US military uses the AR-15 platform. They're also somehow failing to mention the tens of millions of Americans who have played Call of Duty and didn't end up becoming shooters. But no, they're trying to get money out of Daniel Defense for saying, hey cool guys, look, our gun was in a video game. And yet somehow, it still gets worse. Daniel Defense also routinely promotes advertisements that blend its violent weaponry with well-known pop culture references to ensure its advertising is attractive to young men. Oh wow, what a terrible phrase. Attractive to young men is just a phrase that I don't think should be in any legal document. Pop culture references to ensure its advertising is attractive to young men who are particularly susceptible to these deceptive marketing practices. Have a spooky and safe Halloween. What did you dress up as? That's not a pop culture reference. They're literally telling you to have a safe Halloween and did the most basic boilerplate corporate Halloween post you could do. I'm beginning to believe that
why can't I attack it?
Wrote this entire brief. This includes posting an image of a Mark 18 AR-15 rifle with popular musician Post Malone, again with the hashtag gunporn hashtag to broaden its advertisement's reach. So that also begs an interesting question. Now we're mad at Post Malone. Why is he not mentioned in this lawsuit? Why are you not also suing Posty? Not that I think you should or should be able to. This entire lawsuit is fucking stupid. But if this whole thing has devolved into, not talking about what people have actually done damage to you, like holding the shooter accountable, perfectly reasonable. That makes fucking sense. If this whole thing has devolved into just attacking the marketing departments of companies that weren't even involved, then why not try to sue Posty too? Totally also fucking stupid, not trying to give this moron ideas. Also, as far as modern music goes, Post Malone is one of my favorites, so yeah, don't fuck with Posty. But do you see what I'm getting at? Like how this is just a giant slippery slope? Now next up, the complaint they have again with Sons of Liberty Gunworks. They seem to be popular in this lawsuit. You can't complain about being shadow banned anymore. That'll get you sued. Defendant Sons of Liberty Gunworks went so far as to complain about Instagram removing its posts for coordinating harm or promoting crime, and for promoting the sale of illegal or regulated goods. I've known the guys at Sons of Liberty for a long time. They do not coordinate harm, and they do not sell illegal goods. The best part is if you actually read the post. Very confusing. Instagram removed this post, reviewed it, reposted it, then removed it again. I'm not sure if that counts as one violation or two, or if it even matters. I've noticed a trend over the last few years when high-profile gun topics are in the media cycle, our account and other accounts are throttled or removed. I have no doubt the upcoming verdict in a certain case is causing concern, and shutting down anyone who might amplify that conversation is a real priority for them. So Sons of Liberty is literally just sitting here talking about being censored just for, promoting gun content. Believe me, I can relate. This is mentioned here a few times, but somehow is twisted in the suit as to say, defendant Sons of Liberty Gunworks cannot claim ignorance as to the entirely foreseeable impacts of its advertising when a platform that it uses to advertise has plainly informed Sons of Liberty Gunworks that its posts are dangerous. No, you fucking brainlet. They're saying that their posts are clearly within guidelines, which I firmly believe that they are, and that their posts are being taken—
Yeah, all the posts seem pretty innocent. It's not like telling people to go shoot up a fucking school or anything.
Out of context so they could be targeted politically, which this lawsuit is fucking doing. It all just gets so fucking tiring.
Why, for instance, does Naaman ask for dirt after he's healed from leprosy? Where does Daniel get his theology of supernatural princes over nations? Why does Satan quote Psalm 91 to Jesus at his temptation, which was an exorcistic psalm? Did you catch that? Satan uses an exorcistic psalm against Jesus. Why does he do that? Why do demons call Jesus by one title?
What doesn't get tiring is reminding you that if you ever wanted to get your start in gunsmithing and weapons technology, you can check out sti.edu down in the comments. They're the main sponsor of the channel, and we appreciate them very much. These next two, though, have to be some of my personal favorites. Sons of Liberty Gunworks has also incorporated misogynistic jokes into its promotion of illegal firearms activity. Base. In 2022, as Canadian officials considered firearm restrictions, Sons of Liberty Gunworks posted an image reading, "Her. I bet his search history is nothing but porn. His search history, how to send machine guns to Canada." And the caption, by the way, "Good luck, brothers in the North." This is probably during the big, Canadian trucker fiasco, which was fucking rad. Following that up with another meme that they posted. In a reference to a possible modification to make a weapon fire as fully automatic, defendant Sons of Liberty Gunworks posted a picture of a lower receiver, which the shooter purchased from Sons of Liberty Gunworks brand, with the caption, "Hey girl, are you an 80% lower? Because I want to drill your third hole and not tell anyone about you." I cannot condone that kind of humor.
What the fuck?
Is posting memes about this illegal? Absolutely not.
And
Should you be
that's
able to
what
be
they're
sued for it?
saying
No,
is
of course,
that they're suing them for?
But it is
What?
a little naughty. Something important that's actually specified here. a picture of a lower receiver, which the shooter purchased from Sons of Liberty Gunworks brand. By the way, it's not in the photo. It's clearly an 80%. It's a whole fucking joke. It's not an actual lower. But they mentioned specifically that Sons of Liberty, the shooter had apparently purchased at some point a lower from them, like the lower receiver on an AR-15. At the end of the lawsuit, they had to specify every single piece of every single gun that was found, and like from all of the people that are now defendants in this lawsuit. And it's a long list. Like, Daniel Defense had harmed Miss Lowry by selling an upper to somebody that was legally able to have one. But everything Miss Lowry was harmed by. But these were weapons that weren't used in the fucking shooting. Even down to Surefire, because apparently in his safe they found Surefire magazines. Starline Brass is a brass company. They don't make guns. They don't make ammunition. They literally just make the brass casings, and they're being sued. This entire thing is completely ridiculous. When Joe Biden and the rest of those kooks always say, like, oh, we need to hold the gun manufacturers accountable. Accountable for what? They're not doing anything. They're doing things that are completely legal. They're within the confines of the law. What we really ought to be doing is holding the perpetrators.
It's crazy that they're
it's no
even
mistake that all these big blue cities that have the worst gun crime are also the softest
I would
on
say
crime.
that
But no, I'm
it
sorry.
shouldn't
That implies you have to hold people accountable for the consequences of their own actions. No, let's go after the manufacturers instead. That makes a lot more sense. But here's where that political rant turns into a call to action. I'm calling out the people like Daniel Defense, like Surefire. I would say Sons of Liberty, but I know the owners and they're very based, and they're not going to do this anyway. Do not fucking cave to this lawsuit. This lawsuit is an absolutely obvious money grab from a piece of shit attorney trying to take advantage of an actual victim. If any of the people in this lawsuit that I've named here in this video try to settle on this, hold them accountable, because that sets such a bad precedent for the entire gun industry. This is a ridiculous case. It should have been immediately thrown out.
I thought we were already at war.
But if some big corporate company
Why
like Daniel Defense
can't
goes
I
ahead and
fucking
settles just to
attack
try to
them?
make it easier for themselves and put it behind them, this is going to open the floodgates for more of this dumb
Maybe I need
shit
some.
to happen. So be sure to be keeping an eye out, and be sure to tell these companies, stay strong, don't settle. We're all behind you because you did nothing wrong. And the future of the Second Amendment absolutely depends on this. Anyhow, that about sums up the lawsuit. If you want to read it for yourself, I'll go ahead and leave the links down in the description. There's a lot more instances of memes and things that I didn't mention in this video.
What the fuck?
It's kind of funny. I'm actually stoked for like the next month of content we have going. So be sure that you're subscribed, hit that notification icon. I appreciate you guys staying to the end. And as always, I will see you sexy YouTube mother lovers in the next video. Thanks.
All right.
AK guy, aka Senator, Congressman, House of Renaissance. Jesus Christ. I'll write a haiku, but it's not gonna make sense.
All right, I'm done. It's been 3 hours, so. What? Yes. All right. Yeah. I'll see you guys later. Doses.